across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk, yeah. Good morning. Welcome. So, Tuesday, the 4th of August. We're still midsummer. It's nice and glorious out there in most parts of the UK. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. Ian Collins in for Jezza. So, as I mentioned there just before the news, top of the list, the killers of PC Harper remain on the list for early release. Now, we're hearing conflicting stories on this. Certainly that child sex offenders and rapists will not be released. So where is the line drawn here? I think most people listening will say, well, surely the line drawn is whatever your prison sentence was is the one you should serve. That would not be unreasonable. Elsewhere in the land of unfathomable, benefit claimants are being offered discounts on holidays and sex toys. And you did hear that correctly. And deals involving some of Britain's biggest brands. How many brands, plural, are there in the department of the latter? Lots to talk about on that. The Rupert Lowe right-wing pack. Now, this is getting dramatic now because there turned out to be a public spat, as we hear this so often, on the children's social media forum Twitter. I say that for a reason. The spat conducted in public with Mr Lowe calling Mr Farage a liar. What is happening here? Mr Lowe is a grown man. Why is he conducting this business on Twitter? We'd like to know more. If you're into, and we talk about this often, cancellation and banning things, then spare a thought for the crime writer Lynda La Plante. I think she's the one that penned Prime Suspect. And she became the prime suspect down at the local magistrates' court herself, having broken the speed limit on multiple occasions, all of which involved going over a 20-mile-an-hour zone. Now, what was she doing? Like 65, 80? Was La Plante going off like a flipping rocket? No. All of those offences involved driving at less than 30, on one occasion 24 miles an hour. What are we doing banning folk from their cars for minor offences? You've got a 6-month ban on this. Goodness me. And Shabana Mahmood, she's also been posting on Twitter as well, saying that the story of channel migration, well, there's more to it. She said, this is classic government gaslighting. We'll have more on that story, and we'll play you the video as well. 0344 499 1000. You can leave us a voice note there as well. There's an awful lot to talk about. Comments on all of this along the way. And, of course, you can call on the same number or message 87222. Benedict Spence is with us in the studio. The journalist, the commentator, an all-round good bloke who loves early mornings, I discovered a little earlier. It's kind of fun. What is that? Divides the room, doesn't it, the early morning thing? Are you in the category that you hate getting up, but you're all right once you're up, or you just hate the whole thing before midday?
Oh, I would put it into that latter category. Yes. I don't like to see the sun rise. I don't want to know that it's there, to be honest. I just sort of assume at some point that I'll stumble out of bed and that it will be light. Yes. But, you know, you have to, sadly. This has been drilled into me from school, but to be honest, it's never got any easier.
It's never got any.
Yeah.
I mean, it is true, isn't it? I don't know what it is within our sort of metabolism, our biology, our psychology, whatever the hell somebody wants to call it. But it is. You are either one or the other, aren't you?
I think that it is ingrained into our beings, and I think it's because some members of the tribe would need to stay up late to be on guard and keep the fire going, and then be taken over earlier in the morning by others to take up the watch and to keep the fire going.
So there's a natural night shift.
I think that genuinely that's what I think that it is.
In our lizard brain.
Yeah, I think that, yeah, exactly, that some members of the species are meant to be early risers so that they can take over from the ones that are kicking their heels at sort of 3, 4 a.m.
So is that reasonable to suggest, then, that the ones that can't do early rising are just essentially lazy?
Yes.
Because you're not doing... So I'm out hunting, and, like, I'm coming back with a mammoth or something, you know, and a leg of an antelope.
What time are you doing this late-night mammoth hunting?
I'm doing this. I'm on the 4 a.m. gym shift, so I come back with my mammoth, and then I have to wake you up.
It's a Neolithic kebab, is what it is.
That's right, yes. A little hairy, but it's all right.
Yeah.
Lots to talk about here, Benedict. I don't know where to start, to be honest, but I think it's appropriate, perhaps I just want to mention the Rupert Lowe thing. This has long disturbed me, and this is not a new statement to make. I deliberately talked about the teenage forum that is Twitter.
Yeah.
Because I'm on Twitter. Once in a while, I'll engage in something. I do notice that I have colleagues, not necessarily here, by the way, that tweet more in one day. This is absolutely true than I do in a year. Some people are really on it. I can't get beyond the fact that it's just like a children's video game. It's like, what's your high score? How many followers have you got? I see adults complaining that my engagement seems to be down this week. Is anybody else suffering this? It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
It's Twitter, man. It's not real.
It's
Twitter.
The tricky thing with that is increasingly Twitter is real. That is where a lot of people are. That is where a lot of people socialise. It's where a lot of policymakers, I kind of hate that expression, but you know what I mean when I say that. So journalists, people working at think tanks and politicians, it's where they conduct a lot of their interactions with people.
And announcements.
Yeah, so once upon a time that used to be true. People would say, well, the internet isn't real life. Actually, nowadays, I think it is, and I think Twitter is still the sort of the premium area, the premium forum, where a lot of that discourse happens and where a lot of things actually start, which is, I think, a rather depressing reflection on the state of, well, public affairs, frankly. But you look at the alternative, which is the one that's called Blue Sky, and that's a lot worse, and that's full of people who couldn't handle Twitter, basically.
Right,
couldn't handle that
you
particular...
won't get me over there.
Yeah, they were bullied in that nursery, so they had to be taken to another one, basically. So you've got those two, and there's the rough and ready one.
Yeah.
There's the one of us, those of us who are going to go on to great things in life and be dashed in our expectations, and those who had no expectations at all.
Isn't the problem that you're absolutely right, it does, big news organisations, including us, you make announcements on Twitter, you release clips and videos and debates that have happened on Twitter. So it has that use, and it has a brilliant use there. I've always said, for breaking news, when it's an individual that's seen something in the street, Twitter's your best friend for about 10 seconds.
Yeah.
If you spot something that's breaking and you spot it immediately, it's brilliant. After that is the pile-in of innuendo, supposition, invention, lies, and then you don't know where the truth is.
It's funny, because I still think Twitter is one of the best resources for information out there.
Yeah.
If you practice digital hygiene, if you don't succumb to the need...
I love that phrase, digital hygiene.
If you don't succumb to the need for the clickbait, the ragebait, the engagement, you are under no obligation to engage with the majority of the half-wits that are on there, of which there are many, and they seem to reply to me a lot. You don't have to do that. And if you sort of look through the noise, you can find really interesting people, you can find people in places where things are happening. You just have to have a bit of nous about you, a bit of common sense, and actually it can work wonders. But you're right, actually a lot of it is just engagement.
So it's kind of, in the pie chart, it sort of divides up. There is that real big truth factor. It's a great space for instant kind of breaking news and bits and pieces. When people talk about, you'll hear the great disgruntled and the annoyed and the perpetually, not necessarily offended, but those that think you have no right to the same oxygen as them, which is not usually based on some intellectual argument. It's based on the fact they disagree with you.
Yeah.
And it's as simple as that. So you see a lot of people who want to reject what they laughingly call the mainstream media. The mainstream media is the media, and Twitter is the media, and that is usually based on the fact that a bloke called Bob in Arbroath tweets stuff that they agree with. So they say, well, that's where the truth is, because I agree with him, not because it necessarily is the truth.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of that, and we all know what to be confirmation biases, and we all know what the concept of an echo chamber is, and we all understand also that there's a need for certain people to feel as if they have the truth and nobody else has the truth, and that means that whatever their truth is simply can't be the mainstream. And often to be fair, often the mainstream is wrong. There's nobody actually believes that mainstream media organisations, or indeed politicians or anybody, are right 100% of the time, not even 50% of the time. But you're right. There is that tendency to go, right, well, because this isn't a completely infallible source of information, I'm going to go off at a completely different tangent and simply indulge my worldview. Now, for some people, like me, that works really well, because, we're right all the time.
obviously.
But for other people, sometimes you can make pretty catastrophic mistakes.
Yeah, indeed. I remember during COVID, and of course, if anything was going to divide the room, it's almost retrospectively, it's more of a dividing subject. But, at the time, there were some people who were very grumpy and thought there was some sort of kind of global plan to poison us all with that.
It's always that they believe that there's a plan, and then when you're sat there and you go, but I've met the politicians, and I'm telling you, these people are not capable
of a plan.
These are the last people you'd think would come up with a plan.
But I always remember listening, this perfectly encapsulated the problem. So we had, I can't remember who the virologist was, and it was somebody we'd sought out for weeks, because this was, this guy was the top of his field. Not just, he'd done Oxford, Harvard, done all of those areas of education. He'd gone on to do great things, the world's most respected virologist. We got this professor, and he had more letters after his name than we could fit on the screen. He was that kind of character. And he came on, we put a clip on social media straight away. First comment underneath, this bloke don't know what he's talking about. And I thought, well, I've got a feeling he does. I've got a feeling he does. And then posted a link saying, you want to listen to this bloke. And the bloke that he pointed us towards was just some bloke with a different opinion and no qualifications. But, of course, what the guy meant was, I want to agree with that bloke, so therefore this one's... And I don't know. I'm not a virologist, I'm not a microbiologist or any of those ologists, so I don't know.
It's a tricky thing with that, though, because you're right, COVID did wonders for the profiles of lots of scientists that nobody had ever heard of and otherwise never would. But the funny thing with that is, of course, I think a lot of the reason why people like that commenter underneath that video was inclined to just go straight off that, no, I disagree, is because a lot of these scientists were endorsed by politicians or media figures because, again, even if they were right, the perception was, well, this is the line we have to take, and there has to be a line, and the line has to be the truth.
Yes.
And that's not how science works. And this is the really interesting thing, is that there was this mad rush, on the one hand, by people going, no, this is all wrong, it's a conspiracy, but also people going, no, this is the truth, it is the way, it is the light, it is the word, it is the absolute divine truth, and you must adhere to it, otherwise you're insane. And amidst all of this, you've got a lot of scientists going, there isn't really such a thing as, truth or anything like that. And science does constantly evolve, and you have to stress test it, and you have to... That's not how it works on the other hand, but still you have people going, no, this is true, no, this isn't true. And in the middle of that, you have the scientific community going, well, how do we deal with this? Because we're not actually used to this kind of situation.
Yes,
so we have to then double down on well, this is the advice that we would give you, and this is how you have to go. And I think that did a lot of damage, actually, to people's trust in science, because, of course, they were desperately seeking an answer, and it had to be the fixable answer, the solvable problem. Completely unprepared to take into account the idea that actually that's not how it works. Because, of course, their governments had told them, until we get the answer, your lockdowns are going to stay, your mask mandates are going to stay, nothing's going to go back to normal until we have the truth, the answer. So people were prepared to double down on that. And that in a sphere where there's not really any such thing as concrete truth.
Well, I was going to say, it's the classic, more than one thing could be true, can't it? There's lots of things could be true. And throughout that whole era, I would fess up every day, I don't know the answer. I'm not an expert on viruses. I've got no idea.
I mean, I think, vaccines were a great example of that. Broadly speaking, are vaccines a good thing? Yes. Do vaccines have side effects? Yes. Will some people be adversely affected by vaccines? Yes. All of these things can be. Will this help a lot of people? And will it also harm people at the same time? Yeah, it's a vaccine. That's actually what vaccines do. And the question is, how many people does it harm? That's going to be the trade-off.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
Now, obviously, if it's a new vaccine and it's having to be rushed forward because people don't know very much about the disease that it's there to combat, obviously you're not going to have as much of a body of evidence as to how many people. And that's the question, is whether or not you want to take that trade-off. But this idea that, on the one hand, it saves everybody and it stops transmission and it's the solution, or it will give you cancer and you will die. It's kind of like what am I meant to do with this situation?
Yes, and I would always ask that question, what am I meant? I didn't know. I genuinely didn't know. I remember, similarly with Brexit, the girl that used to cut my hair said to me one day, she goes, why are they asking me about leaving the EU? And I said, what do you mean? She goes, well, what do I know about trading policy and monetary policy? How would I possibly know that? She said, I can only vote on a feeling. And I thought, that's a great answer. You can only vote on a feeling, not necessarily a fact, on a feeling. And we are in a world of feelings, aren't we? And I think just to go back to the kind of Rupert Lowe, Nigel Farage thing, there is a sort of feeling that we want these guys to get together and make it work because it will be an encapsulation of similar thought, and collectively they're more powerful.
Yeah.
Whether that is the reality, whether it's doable, is another matter.
It's a tricky one with the right, more broadly speaking, because you hear this phrase, unite the right, try and defeat Labour, try and stop the left from monopolising power. But increasingly, I think people are understanding two things that divide the right. One is that the idea of the big state, more nationalist inclination is not compatible with Thatcherism and the free market. And on the other hand, the conservative movement, the right-wing movement, is full of egos. It's full of egos, and they cannot agree. This is why the Conservative Party failed, because it was full of people trying to jostle for position, trying to knife each other in the back or the front, because they all thought they could be Prime Minister. It's something from which the country is suffering as a result. The right, it invites very ambitious people. It invites big characters. By its very nature, it believes more in the idea of the big man, the great man of history theory, rather than the collective on the left.
Good
so
point.
you're always going to get that sort of thing. The problem in this country is, actually, I think the egos have superseded the ideology, and that's what you've got with Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage. Fundamentally, it's about their personalities above all else.
That's a great point. If you go to Capitol Hill, there's 1,000 of these blokes.
Yeah.
They all talk like that.
Yeah.
It's just normal talk and cant, and that's how it is. Whereas here, it still sort of stands out a little bit. Let's have a listen, by the way. So yesterday, just after we came off here, there was a press conference with Nigel Farage and talking about this, and of course it all follows on Rupert Lowe's piano-accompanied video that he released yesterday, I think it was on Sunday, saying, look, I'm willing to make a deal with you. Here's what Mr. Farage said at that press conference yesterday.
You could see a situation where Restore, without the hope of winning anything outside Great Yarmouth, I mean, literally without a hope of winning a single seat in the country, could do us great harm. And I think online you will see a lot of Restore potential voters now beginning to worry about the impact that might have. So look, I'll finalise that by saying, if it was the offer of a deal, it came in a very unusual way. I have responded to it, potentially, with an open mind, as I would.
So that's what Mr. Farage said yesterday. Rupert Lowe has kind of hit the roof on this, and he posted again on Twitter. I mean, this is it. It's like 500 pages of this stuff. But I'll just briefly say what he said at the beginning. I do not want to make private conversations public, he starts with, and then goes on to cite the entire conversation. But Farage has just done so at a national press conference. He just stated, he said to me yesterday, shall we have a call? Sadly, that's just a lie. Yesterday at 10:30, Nigel messaged me saying the following 3 words, "We'll call later. The evidence is below." And then he's got a little screen grab of the words, "We'll call later." He then says, I received no call at all. Senior Reform figures then went public to rubbish my offer. And he goes on and on it goes. He finishes with, that is how we collectively can and will restore Britain. We will work with anyone to make that happen.
It's, as I say, these are two men who, it's also, I think, at least in part because of the stages that they've got to in their life. These are not people who feel that they ought to be compromising on anything because they are the big dog in their respective areas of interest. And, there's some justification there. They're also both right in that, Nigel Farage is right. Restore is not going to win any seats beyond maybe Great Yarmouth, maybe a couple more here or there in that immediate area. But let's be honest, they're probably not going to win more than one. But they absolutely can stop Reform from winning a whole host of seats.
Of course.
So it is a significant thing. And I mean, you've seen in the recent by-election in Manchester and in Makerfield, they've come ahead of the Conservatives. And I think that that's, a sign of actually where a lot of dissatisfied voters are going. The problem is, you listen to the way that Reform members and Restore members talk about each other. It's really quite visceral. They often seem a lot more snide about each other than they do about Labour or the Conservatives, because it's within the movement, it's within the sort of the protest movement, the insurgent movement, that the schism has come. And both sides, I think, really just revile the fact that the other is not pure.
Yes.
And, one is split away from the cause, so by definition it's not pure, whereas those people have split away because they don't think that reform is everything that it promised to be. I don't know how you reconcile that. There's not going to be a right-wing insurgent government unless that is reconciled. We need to be clear about this.
That's
a
fair.
bit like when the Brexit Party had people defect to the Conservatives at that general election. Otherwise, it's entirely possible that that vote could have been split. Sometimes you have to make a difficult compromise.
Yeah.
A lot of people would therefore, but in that situation, a lot of people would say, well, the compromise was that we got Boris Johnson, and look how that went for everybody. So, I think it's going to be harder for people to make that compromise going forward.
We appreciate your comments on this, of course. 0344 499 1000. You drop us a voice note there as well. On the Pat, it continues. The drama continues. Where are you on this? What's your observations over the last 24 hours since Mr. Lowe released that initial video? Early release, comments on that as well. You can message 87222. Let's get a voice note on the latter there. This comes from James. Morning, James.
Good morning, Ian. I'd just quickly like to talk about the early release prison scheme that this crackpot Labour Party have decided to do. It is unbelievable, Ian. Words fail me. I mean, apparently they're going to be releasing those two scumbags who dragged that policeman, that poor policeman. I mean, where's this justice in this world, Ian? This is absolutely shameful. Here's an idea, Ian. Why don't we just get rid of these 10,000 foreign criminals that should be deported? There you go. You've just freed up a load of room. Like I said, Ian, it's absolutely shameful how low this government actually scoop. Anyway, Ian, thank you very much for listening to my voice note.
i.e. cooperations in government, they achieve absolutely nothing. There is one party that has a real chance of winning a majority on the right in this country. We're going to fight to win. And we'd encourage everybody who shares the values that I talked about, who want mass deportations, who want a secure border, who want law and order, who want British people to come first, to get behind reform. But having said
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. That is where you will find us. You can message there as well. Benedict Spence, the political commentator, is with us. There's a lot to look at this morning, particularly this interesting comment from the Home Office, where they say that they put a tweet out saying, we're aware of posts circulating online that claim French law enforcement are failing to prevent small boat channel crossings. So they put this out a couple of days ago. UK-French cooperation has already stopped 46,000 attempted crossings since the election. And they claim, of course, that they've removed and deported 70,000 people. And the Centre for Migration Control have crunched the numbers on this. And they've made a point of essentially just highlighting the facts. So of this 70,000 that the Home Office have claimed to have removed, 35% left without officials even knowing it. They just disappeared naturally back to from wherever they came. 26% were paid to leave. Just 25% were deportations. and 2/3 of these were Europeans. So they make the point this is not really control, this is spin. So there's probably just a handful of people.
There's a lot of spin. I mean, we saw this actually in the aftermath of the Ceuta border crossings in Morocco, actually. What was it, sort of 50, 60,000 people crossed into that enclave. And then we were told within a day, we were told, oh, the right are making a mountain out of a molehill. Most of these people have already been returned. They've already gone back. And you were sort of left sitting there going, well, hang on, where's the evidence for that?
Yes.
Actually, we've not seen video footage of people being taken back across the border in those sorts of numbers. And, what little footage we are getting out of Ceuta suggests actually rather a lot of people are still there.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, the latest sort of stage, rather than sort of sitting there and saying, oh, it's all about, it's all about charity and this, that and the other, and these are the bedraggled of the world and they actually require our assistance. It's now gone back to a very much a sort of a, oh, what are you talking about? We've already deported these people. Look how many we're deporting. I mean, we've seen this, haven't we, with at the very tail end of Keir Starmer's time as Prime Minister, trying to push out but this whole time, net migration has fallen, and we've just been very bad at spinning this message.
Yes.
And we're all kind of sat there going, but we know why net migration is falling. Because people are emigrating. Because people are moving their money offshore.
Yes.
That's why you didn't, in fact, trumpet it at the height of you being Prime Minister, because it would have been spin that everybody saw through. You're only doing this now at the tail end because it doesn't matter, because you're leaving.
We've also got this claim that, and Andy Burnham has made this. Andy went down to Dover very diligently. Wasn't going to be caught, sitting in the garden in Chequers making a TikTok video. He thought, I'm going to get down to the coalface or the white face of the cliffs, and flanked by that beautiful, iconic view of the south coast. He made the claim again that, numbers have gone down 40-odd% in the last year, so the plan is working. And I heard the BBC repeat this claim without any real analysis behind it.
Yeah.
And, the idea that this is down to a Labour policy, that in the last 12 months, something that's been going on for a decade now, and in the last 12 months, apparently, the brilliance of Keir Starmer and Shabana Mahmood, Yvette Cooper, whoever was running the show at the time, have somehow put off this one-in, one-out thing, or whatever the hell it is, which doesn't really work, because as far as we can see, it's about 11,000 in, one out.
Yeah.
That seems to be the case. The idea that this and whatever other, smashing the gangs and paying a bunch of money to the freight, this hasn't worked in any shape or form.
No.
There's no evidence for that
As
at all.
you say,
there may well be a natural drop, and I think the whole of Europe has had a natural drop as well. But it's not the brilliance of the Labour Party.
No, and as you say, a lot of this is just spin. It's just quite unashamed attempts to sort of massage figures, but also to change the metrics by which things are measured. And this is something that governments do all the time. And we've had no economic growth in this country for an awfully long time. And if you look at GDP per capita, you can see, actually, we've effectively flirted with an almost 2-decade-long recession in this country. But, of course, if you measure it a different way, then it shows sort of incremental growth of 0.1%, 0.2%, this, that and the other. So, obviously, that's the number that the government's going to go with. And, we saw this when we decided we were going to send 50% of young people to university. Oh, it's about empowering people. It's about making them better. No, it's not. It's about getting them off the unemployment register. We all know that this is what they do. And yet they still continue to do it, because doing that is far simpler than actually gripping the issue and then getting the nasty headlines when people on the left, when The Guardian would turn around and say, look at this heavy-handed treatment of people being arrested as they get off the shore. The poor, downtrodden of the world, they're all refugees, never mind how old they are or where they come from. That's the point, that they're all very desperate, and where are you going to put them? Surely not a holding pen. It's basically a concentration camp. They're not prepared to put up with those kind of headlines and do the difficult things. So they'd far rather just spin the numbers and pretend that the problem's getting better.
Let's listen to some clips then on boats. So I want to start with that press conference, Andy Burnham standing there on his Todd on the white cliffs of Dover. Here's what he said.
The number of crossings is down by 50% this year compared with the same period in 2025. And the month we've just had, July, has been the lowest number for 6 years of people crossing. So clearly progress is being made, but we're not complacent. It's why I am here. So we're just going to be relentless. People want to see this issue addressed. I heard that on the doorsteps in Makerfield, but we also need to build a system that offers safe routes for people as well, because that also takes away the selling point of the gangs.
There is the Prime Minister repeating what, frankly, is I would suggest a lie, not necessarily a lie specifically from him, a lie that it's down to policy that there has been this drop. Let's then listen to Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, responding again to this ongoing story.
I know how frustrating it is to see footage of small boat crossings, like the videos many of us saw last week. But it is easy to see them and think that's the whole story. The truth is, it isn't. We are stopping thousands of attempts to reach this country by small boat, and we are bearing down on the smuggling gangs behind this evil trade.
Well, she can say that all she likes. There's 1,000 people a day at the moment coming into this country. They are not. That is not, by any definition, a success.
No, it's not a success. And even if this is the other thing, of course, they're talking about small boat crossings being down potentially. We don't know actually if there's another route by which people have started.
Correct.
Once upon a time, they used to use the Channel Tunnel. They used to use the ferries. They used to use cars. They used to use lorries. In fact, I know full well that lorries often are still used as the vector by which lots of migrants get into this country illegally.
Yes.
We don't talk about it because it's not as obvious a visual as people very brazenly coming over it in the boats, but it still happens on a huge scale. And, you know, a lot of companies end up getting into real financial difficulties and real legal difficulties because, you know, they get their trucks from A to B, they open them up in the middle of nowhere, you know, where their depot is, and find that there's a load of people in the back, and they are then legally responsible for that, which is, you know, a nightmare for those sorts of companies. But, you know, as you say, they're talking about this potentially being as a result of policy. But we all know that actually this summer has been particularly unusual for all sorts of things. And not just because of the heat, but also the expense of crossing from parts of the world where, you know, mass migration is from. Wars in the Middle East have sort of kicked off again. That's going to make the movement of people actually from other places, such as India, more difficult because that's where a lot of these people come from. So you've got to just think about all of these things more generally. And I think, you know, one of the big takeaways is that we know that these trafficking gangs are offering passage to people for significantly reduced rates. That suggests actually that the demand might be down. But if it's for reduced rates, that's because those people have less money to spend in the first place. And that, of course, could well be as a result of the massive uptick in inflation that has been caused in great parts of the third world as a result of events going on again in the Middle East and elsewhere.
Indeed. Well, let's get a word then finally on this point from Nigel Farage. Here's what he said yesterday.
There is an argument doing the rounds in the media that it's OK. It's fine. The numbers are 40% lower than they were this time last year. But it only takes one or two Iranian terrorists to come into Britain and commit a mass atrocity for this to be a disaster. The Australians faced all of these problems many years ago. They tried offshore processing. They tried a number of things, and in the end what worked was towing the boats back to Indonesia. And since then, hardly a boat has landed in Australia. I am entirely confident that under a reform government, within a fortnight, there would be no more boats.
Well, that's Mr. Farage's point. I think he's absolutely bang on about this. I mean, there's this plan about the Royal Navy, and that's fired up a whole other debate because many people in the Royal Navy are saying we actually haven't got any boats.
Yes.
So not sure we're actually able to facilitate the idea. And the French have got the hump about it, but it doesn't take much for the French to get the hump, and who cares anyway?
And, yeah, there's also some people saying that even if they had the boats, the Royal Navy would refuse or this, that and the other. They just wouldn't do it. The problem there, of course, is straight off the bat you've got somebody suggesting something that may or may not be feasible. Let's be clear, we don't know until it's been tried. A bit like Rwanda, you don't actually know until you try it. But a large part of the problem, I think, in this country is when somebody comes up with a slightly left field, or say left field is the wrong expression, a right-leaning solution to a problem, the instant response is it can never work because it is practically impossible and morally wrong. And it's always that those two things are bound up somehow, which is that actually because it's morally wrong, it's also therefore practically impossible. We all know that that's not actually how life works, but the furore that comes from that, and you're right, this has stirred up a bit of a conversation. I'm sure that Nigel Farage knew that it would do that. He wants to get back onto the agenda of talking about the government's failure over migration rather than what's been going on within reform itself. So perhaps it's not a plan that he would ever see through, but nonetheless, the point still stands that the current plan as it is isn't really doing anything.
Well, if only they had kept Keir Starmer in the job, then everything would have been fine, and that pesky man from Manchester hadn't pitched up to nick his job, because Keir Starmer, of course, was well and truly on this one. And if you don't take my word for it, have a listen. So this is my favourite motto. We used to play this a lot on afternoons. Have a listen.
You will have helped to smash the gangs. Take those gangs down. Smashing the gangs. No shortcut. Smash the criminal gangs. No gimmicks. Have to smash those gangs. Just the hard graft of sleeves rolled up. Smash the gangs. Practical government. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. We will smash the gangs that undermine our security. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
Smash the gangs.
There's just a little bit of Lammy at the end there, but the people smuggling guns as well, that one got in too. What was the point of all of that? What was the point? It made this big... Obviously, Rishi Sunak had this stop the boats thing, and that was going nowhere. It might have had some credibility had Rwanda happened, but it never did. And then, of course, Labour came in and went, well, we've got to get rid of that. So we get rid of Rwanda, we get rid of the stop the boats thing. What should we come up with? I know. Smash the gangs, because that will really penetrate the zeitgeist.
I mean, the nuts thing about that is, all it did was serve to highlight the fact that gang crime in the UK is on the rise. And you'd have this thing with the Prime Minister saying, smash the gangs, and everybody in Labour saying, smash the gangs. But then when you turned around and said, London feels a lot less safe than it used to, didn't it? And Birmingham and Manchester and they seem to be a little bit more criminally minded than they used to be. The very same people that would say smash the gangs would turn around and go, what are you talking about? Crime is down. Violent crime is down. Burglaries are down. Drug crime is down. No, don't let your lying eyes tell you otherwise. Yes, there are huge numbers of gangs operating in the Channel, and that is where they stop. Up until when they get to Dover, that's it. They go, right, we're turning back, and we will have no more interactions with the UK. So all it's done is serve to highlight the fact that there are vast criminal networks organising in the UK. Broadly, they're able to operate with impunity because of policing cuts and also the fact that their foot soldiers get released from prison very early because we don't build enough prisons. But there's an absolute refusal to admit the descent of the UK into levels of criminality, only when it comes to crossing the Channel. And it's the fault of those criminals, not the fault of the people crossing themselves. Those are the ones that are to blame.
Benedict Spence is with us. More from him in a couple of moments. Over to you as well. 0344 499 1000. That's the place to drop us a voice note on this subject. Frankly, the tissue of whoppers coming out of the Home Office. Oh, yeah, we've just only telling some of the story. We're really on to this. No, you're not. It's a disaster zone. You are gaslighting us, Home Secretary. We're having none of that. Thoughts on the Navy? Could they really do anything? And also early release. We're discussing that too. Details to come. It's 20 to 7. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. 0344 499 1000. We should mention this, by the way. How long's Andy Burnham been in the job?
Well, it's a fortnight. A little bit more than a fortnight, yes. Is it? It's not very long. It's not a month.
I mean, I would imagine if you come into that job, you're going to, you get the job and you think, right, that's it. I'm grafting on this for the next. It's going to be about a year before I get a Saturday off.
Yeah.
Andy Burnham's gone on holiday. He's taking a holiday.
It's very... I tell
He's
you
been
what,
there 2 weeks.
that's
He's
very...
gone to Pontins.
It's a very classic British thing, though, isn't it? When you take a new job after they've offered you, you
Yes.
go, oh, by the way, I do already have this annual leave booked off. I've got this off. It's been booked for 2 whole years,
Yes.
so I am going to have to take it. And your employer goes, I see.
Yes, exactly.
And that's all of us now. Finally, those of us that have tried that in the past are having that back to us,
Yeah.
but from our own Prime Minister. So maybe we deserve that on some level.
Well, he's gone on holiday. Louise Haig is now in charge, apparently.
Oh.
She's not.
Oh, God.
Yes, I know. Yeah. Well, that's the interesting part about
Okay,
this.
everybody head for Calais.
She was spectacular.
You're on your own.
Let's go to France. Let's go to Ceuta or something.
Yes,
You know, I
sounds
don't know,
like
maybe,
a great time
maybe
to
that's the
take
place
in the sights of
Well,
Europe.
It leaves her as apparently the most senior minister in Westminster. I'm not quite sure where that... I mean, because you've got the Home Secretary, you've got the Foreign Secretary. I don't know where that... Maybe they're on holiday as well. But Burnham's taken a week off for a foreign holiday, and it means that she is, you know, in Downing Street. She becomes the sort of de facto deputy, in a way. She's the first Secretary of State, Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster, a phrase that nobody really knows what it means. It just gets repeated, that one. She's the Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. Is she? Yes. Wow, that's good, isn't it? Yeah. What is it? Don't know. Nobody knows.
We have a whole book full of those sort of titles and positions, though.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, you resign your seat, or this, that, and the other, or, you know, you're third most senior deputy member of the House of Lords or something like that. You get a special sort of role. We're quite good at handing out those little gongs to placate people, but I didn't realise that means that you get to run the government for 2 weeks.
Exactly.
You get this particular one.
Yes. Is it the other one that always gets me is he's the Postmaster General.
Yes.
The post, what does he do? Does he go around, does he deliver the letters? I mean, what does the Postmaster General do? Does he sell you stamps? I don't know. What's the deal with this person?
No, I have no idea. But it's fun, though. If anybody's got any particularly niche ones that they like, then they should too. What is the best one, actually, to have of these incredibly
These
niche roles to
incredible
have?
titles that sort of have hung around. Don't get me wrong, there's part of me that kind of likes it, which is why I am a fan of convention. When I was in the press gallery at Westminster, I never got tired of the, you know, the sort of protocols and the kind of oddness and men wearing wigs sitting down around the speaker's table. You know, these were, you know, razor-sharp lawyers, essentially, that sit there knowing every sinew of the rule book. And I loved that, and the ornateness and how it... Which is why I'm a big fan of the old courtrooms rather than modern courtrooms.
Yes.
You know, I love a panelled courtroom.
Yes, I think as much wood as you need. You know, dark
much wood as you
hardwood,
can get in there.
Hardwood, not the sort of weird laminate sort of
No,
stuff
not that
you get.
stuff that looks like you bought it
Do you know
from
what
IKEA.
else I miss? Hanging judges. Oh, wait, no, sorry. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. But yes, the older things were much better. But we used to do that. I'm going to sound incredibly nostalgic, like an old fogey now, but actually, you know, your memory is not deceiving you. This country did used to be quite good.
Yes.
And there were many aspects of the tradition and the pageantry that we'd held on to for a very long time because it worked, and it was a direct line to history. And it does feel as though in the last 30, 40 years, so much of it has just been put in a skip and replaced by something cheaper and less effective. I think that that's what you see around you.
You're absolutely right about the old judges, and judges do sometimes get a bad rap because there's always this. It's a bit of an urban myth. All judges fall asleep in court. I remember did a bit of court reporting back in the early days, and going to a case at Maidstone Crown Court, and obviously in a courtroom, as many people will know, everybody's sat down. The judge is the person that comes in last, and everybody stands for the judge. And I thought, when's the judge coming in? And this spherical object of a judge
rolled in.
Almost this hunched figure was almost kind of craned into his seat, and I thought, what is this? It was kind of like some Doctor Who-esque sort of character. Was plonked into this seat. You could hardly see the face above the desk, and like, there's a wig. I could see a wig, and I could see a nose, and I could see this character shuffling papers, looking around, and then he spoke, and he spoke very well. But what was interesting, and this was quite a complex murder case, and I remember listening to, I think it must have been the defence lawyer, make an argument, and this wiry old kind of dinosaur of a judge who looked as if he was about to become extinct in front of our very eyes, suddenly piped up without, you know, he hadn't checked this, he didn't have a laptop in front of him, and he reeled off. He gave a rollicking to this defence lawyer as to why he was absolutely wrong on what he just said. And if he'd bothered to look at the 1932 paragraph 6 ruling on defence, it's impossible to make that argument given the backdrop of Rule 79, which came in back in the 70s. One conflicts with the other. He has no right to be making. Do never make that argument in my courtroom. It was and I thought, wow, this guy is on fire. So I absolutely misjudged this kind of legal creature that was wheeled out for the delectation of Maidstone Crown Court.
Yeah.
In fact, he was a razor-sharp legal brain.
But this is, I mean, we're going to, sadly, we have, I wouldn't say we've lost it already, because there are still
started with
judges
Louise
like
Haig on this.
Yeah, we did. We started with Louise Haig, and we managed to find our way to razor-sharp wit, which I don't think anybody expected to find
Not
at the
in
end
the
of this
same
conversation.
postcode.
Yeah, but we are going to lose a lot of this, though, with the introduction of AI into all aspects of life. Sadly, a lot of it's going to be outsourced to a machine to do this sort of thing, and it will become a much more sterile environment, which I do think is quite sad. I think that the human element of all aspects of life is very important. And actually, I think when it comes to justice, it's very important. I think that that's partly why there was so much outrage when it emerged that there were plans afoot to potentially get rid of jury trials, because even though juries can be very flawed and very often are flawed, and we've seen multiple examples of that in recent times, it's still the point that you're being judged by human beings and that they are your peers, ultimately, rather than the state taking more and more control, which, as everything becomes mechanized, by definition, that means the state gets more control over the outcome.
Yeah, that makes sense. This comes in from Chris, who says, and by the way, I'm going to ask the question, does Andy Benham deserve a holiday, by the way? Is it OK that he's gone on holiday? Chris says, Benedict says the Navy won't stop the boats. Well, simply sack the admirals and cancel their pensions. Ships will soon be in the Channel. Well, I don't think they will, because there aren't any ships.
There's lots of admirals.
Lots of admirals,
but
very few ships.
That
was the point you were making.
Yeah, but this is also, again, a part of the point, which is how easy or difficult it is to sack people in this country. And, this is something that Dominic Cummings has sort of talked about at great length, the frustration he found when he was in Number 10 for that, particularly auspicious period of time, where he would come up against all sorts of officials that he couldn't do anything about, because the only person that has the power to sack these people is the Prime Minister. And actually, if what you are ending up doing is going to the Prime Minister and there's a queue of ministers and stuff behind him going, well, I've got about 40 or 50 odd people that I need to sack because none of them will do their jobs, it's not actually governing, and it becomes a bit of a bottleneck. And this is something that, an incoming government, a right-wing government, a reform government, or, a conservative government of a different stripe, which I don't believe exists, if you really want to reform these things, it's going to take an awful lot of sackings, and there's an awful lot of legal repercussions for that, because you've got to find other people to replace them. It creates really sticky problems. They're problems that do need to be addressed. This will have to be done at some point. But find me the politician that's got the gumption to do it, that's got the cojones to do it. And, I'll be very surprised if we have one. I doubt even Farage would be bold enough to start sacking admirals because they wouldn't actually do what he said.
Yes, and I don't think that this is not like, we hear people talk about left-wing judges and all the rest of it.
Which I think is a really hilarious thing, if anybody's actually met a judge.
It's kind of very...
You don't... I know that there is this perception that the legal profession has gone very left, and there are a lot of left-wing lawyers, far more, I think, than used to be, and there are more left-wing judges than there used to be. But the average judge is not, in fact, a communist. And there is this perception that they are. One thing that a lot of them are is very pro-EU, which I think a lot of people get mixed up as therefore being left-wing because it leans into a more sort of liberal elitist tendency.
Yes, this is on asylum
Yeah,
cases.
but I think that there's actually a very easy reason for this, and, you sort of demonstrated it right there when you gave the example of the judge that was able to reel off legislation that goes back a century odd. Imagine, given how deeply embedded we were into EU law, telling all of those lawyers and all of those judges off the bat, right, all of this that you have memorised and that you've worked with your whole life, do you see this lighter? We're going to set fire to all of that, and we're going to restart from scratch. You're going to have to learn everything all over again. You can imagine, actually, why the average lawyer is sat there going, absolutely not. This is going to completely torpedo, certainly my summer holiday. I'm not going to be going anywhere, because all aspects of the worldview that I have is about to be upended. So I don't think that there's a lot of left-wing judges. I do think that there are a lot of judges and lawyers who are wedded to the procedures that they've grown up that they've, gone through their professional life getting to understand. And I think people, certainly when they get older, they don't like change.
True, and usually a judge is merely interpreting the law.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there is, the law can be malleable and open to interpretation, but often it's written. The judge has one choice. If the law says that's all the judge can go by.
Yeah, we've taken away a lot of their ability to actually interpret and to actually do things themselves. So, presumably because they are too right-wing for the state's liking. They weren't very happy with the idea of a judge saying, right, guilty, 25 years, that's it. And the state's out there going, but we haven't got any prison spaces. You can't send them to prison for that long.
We took a call, I think it was a tweet or a message or something a few months ago from a woman who's worked in courts in some kind of an admin role all her life, 50 years or whatever in a busy courtroom. She said, I've never met a left-wing... She said, if anything, these old duffers come in a nicely chauffeured car from the Shires, from their, 17-acre pile. There's very few of these people, she said, I would ever have considered for 1 second were left-wing. However, I think the point Chris was perhaps alluding to was that we might have left-wing admirals now.
Left-wing admirals. I mean...
I like the way you're musing this. Left-wing admirals.
Do you know what? I don't
What's
know.
What's a view on that?
I don't know many members of the Royal Navy. I know members of the other forces, but I don't know many members of the Royal Navy. It's entirely possible. I don't think it's likely. I do think it's a bit like with the judges. There will be a lot of people who are effectively having to respond to rules that have been given to them that are made by left-wing politicians and overseen by left-wing civil servants. And these people understand this is going to make your life a lot more difficult if you don't go along with it. And most people, especially if you're not at war, in the armed forces, they're not actually itching to make their lives more difficult because they understand that when push comes to shove, their life could be very difficult. The trade-off is a slightly less difficult life during peacetime. So I can understand why the average admiral who knows nothing about DEI or trans issues or something like that would just go, all right, well, this is nonsense. I'm just going to have to go with it because otherwise it's going to create, reels and reels of paperwork for me. I'll just sign it off. You can entirely understand why people would do that.
We'll come to speeding offences and the curious story of Linda LaPlante in just a second. Let's firstly get a voice note on that Restore Reform Pact. This comes from Rob. Morning, Rob.
When it was COVID, the government lied and they used media to push certain things which later were found to be wrong. Same with this thing, the Spanish enclave, Cueto, whatever you call it. 60-odd thousand people launched into there. And then the Spanish Prime Minister said they'd all gone, when the mayor of that very place said no, there's still over 25,000. And this goes on. All the politicians lie all the time. So when it comes to people like Farage and Lowe, who actually start talking a bit of common sense, do you know what? It really annoys me how they behave sometimes, because I just want to get in a room with them, smack their heads together and say, look, sort yourselves out. You're either on the same team or you're not. Either or. Don't sit there acting like 3-year-olds arguing, because then you happen to pee off the very people you rely on. The voters that actually want to hear common sense. People who talk straight and are going to carry through with their promises. Not some hot air windbag with a Labour rosette or a Tory rosette. I want to see somebody who's actually going to put their country first for a change and do the job that we all want doing. Sort this bloody mess out that we're all in.
Go, Rob. Hey. No messing around there. Yeah, the Cueto thing is interesting. The more I read about this, it's being referred to as a kind of Gen Z protest more than anything. Bit of social media thrown in. Average age about 15. Let's do a Beano over to Spain, kick off, and then leg it back home again. The numbers do differ, as Rob said, as to how many are left. Some people say a few thousand. A mayor made the point that there was 25,000 still there. Whatever the reality is, it doesn't seem to have... this wasn't, I think, a response to people thinking, oh, if I get to Spain, I can be part of the amnesty.
It's a tricky one to know, actually, because the sheer number of people that have gone in that sort of instance means that there is obviously a level of coordination about it.
100%.
But, as I say, based simply on the demographics, you wouldn't be surprised, though, if it was about migration, because actually, even though there is a very youthful element to this, and it might be a sort of a flash mob or something like that, this is also the demographic of people that do regularly end up washing up in Spain. And indeed on our own shores.
But I don't think most of them are Moroccans. I think most are from West Africa.
Well, this is another part of the issue that Morocco has, which is that it has got huge numbers of people coming from sub-Saharan Africa and West Africa who want to get to Europe.
Correct.
And an awful lot of pressure is put on the Moroccan authorities to not let them get there. But they sure as hell don't want those people hanging about in their own country.
100%.
They also have demographic problems of their own in Morocco. It's a developing nation. It doesn't have the resources. Now, that's not me saying, oh, well, we should feel sorry for them, let them all in. The opposite.
Yes.
But what I am saying is I would completely understand if there was a sort of a sotto voce, acknowledgement from the authorities in Morocco. Listen, just let them in. Just let them go.
Mostly young men, which has given rise to apparently a new slogan over there in Morocco, Stop the Blokes. I don't know whether there's any truth in that or whether it's likely to work. Benedict, thank you.
Thank you.
We will speak soon. Benedict Spence with us here on Talk. More from you on the way after the news at 7.
$49,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Secretary has brought forward a very rigorous plan in relation to this, and let's remember, of course, the numbers can fluctuate, but overall boat crossings are down quite significantly year on year, so that does suggest that the plan is working.
We've just witnessed drone footage of the French authorities handing out life jackets to illegal immigrants and then waving them goodbye as they head on their way towards the UK. So the French are actively helping and facilitating illegal immigration. In addition to that, the French forces did nothing to stop that huge migrant dinghy. In fact, the dinghy came out, then it went back to the beach to pick up even more illegal immigrants and then departed for a second time. During all of that, the French did nothing, and they even handed out life jackets and waved goodbye as these illegal immigrants head towards the UK. I think that's terrible. I mean that anyone who did cross the channel and arrive in Dover could be immediately deported within around about a week.
Wait a second, he's just dragging a line to it.
Is that a warning shot towards us? I don't know.
I was trying to work out.
Okay. The French officers could clearly see we were conducting an interview on the back of the fishing boat. They sailed extremely close to us and started firing gunshots, 11 live rounds. We could see the bullets hitting the water behind our boat. They weren't firing before their approach. They weren't firing afterwards. There was no notification of any kind of training exercise. So it did seem to me to be an effort to intimidate us.
The thing that I find, and I should say alarm clock Brits find so frustrating, Chris, and this is why I wanted you on this morning. Yesterday, finally, the unelected Messiah of Manchester stood up and said to consummate fury from most of us that Labour's plan to stop dinghy migrants is working. This, Chris, despite the fact that 1,000 illegal migrants have still come into this country in the last 9 days since he became Prime Minister.
Je suis un député dans le Parlement du Royaume-Uni. Why have you allowed the migrants into the water? Why haven't you stopped them?
Pourquoi on les saute pas? Ouais. Pourquoi on les saute pas? Our order is to let them go like that.
Your order is to let them go?
We just have to say to them, don't do that, it's dangerous.
So your orders are not to intervene?
We have to protect them.
Well, there's also protecting the border as well.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome. It is Talk Breakfast. Ian Collins in for Jezza for the next couple of weeks. There's a whole load of stuff going on at this end. We are, of course, top of the list, talking about early release again. Back on the agenda, the news that the killers of PC Harper remain on the list to be released early. Now, we're hearing that rapists, child sex offenders will not be released. So where is the line drawn? I think the short answer is that none of these people should be released. What are we doing? 10,000 foreign prisoners in jail. I would love to know. I'd love to know. I mean, people are going to say, well, it's the ECHR. Is there something else that stops you going, well, you know, a lot of these people are just from European countries. Albania is a big area. You just sort of shift those people back to their homeland. You've got a prison place right on your hands there. Also this morning, the Rupert Lowe right-wing PAC saga continues. Mr Lowe suggesting Nigel Farage was meant to phone him and then called him a liar. This spat was conducted, of course, in the public forum that is Twitter. This is a grown man. Rupert, what are you doing conducting this online in this respect? It's not very... I know it's where business is done these days, but tidbits of conversations is not a great look. And we didn't get around to talking about this with Benedict in the last hour. We might get into it. This is Linda LaPlante, the prime suspect writer, who's become the prime suspect in a speeding saga. She's got herself a speeding ban. She's claiming her career will be over. But here's the interesting bit. All of the offences she committed were for doing over 20 mile an hour in 20 mile an hour zones. But interestingly, and I do think this is pivotal, on all occasions she was doing less than 30 miles an hour. And in fact, on one of those occasions, just 24. Should we really be banning? But we cancel and ban people at the drop of a pen. Half an hour ago, there would have been no offence committed in this area. She's notched over the 20. It's really easy to go over 20 miles an hour. You're not speeding. Come on, you're not speeding. That's the wrong word or way to describe this. But she's got herself a 6-month ban as a result. Have you ever been in that situation? 0344 499 1000. So much to get through, so many comments. If you want to join in on this, you know the quickest way to avoid the queues, 0344 499 1000. You can drop us a voice note on that number on any of these stories. And of course, stopping the boats is also central. The Home Office releasing, Shabana Mahmood releasing a weird video, you know, like we're on it, we're stopping. Thousands of people are being stopped. We're having 1,000 a day arriving at the moment. That is not success, Home Secretary or Mr Burnham. Not that he's listening, because he's currently on a deck chair in Cleethorpes enjoying some sun, because having been in the job 2 weeks, he needed a week off. Of course he did. Let's get a voice note on small boats. This comes from Perry. Morning, Perry.
Morning, Ian. Well, for me, at least, Nigel is talking about it and he's trying to do something about it. I mean, other presenters have said, oh, I don't know if the Royal Navy would be keen on that idea. Well, the Royal Navy are there to follow orders. The Royal Navy is there to protect our country. Can you imagine Margaret Thatcher being told, when she wanted to deploy the Royal Navy, her being told, yeah, I don't know if the Royal Navy would like that idea. You know, they just do as they're told. It's their job to fight for the country, protect us. All this, oh, the Royal Navy might not like that idea. A load of old rubbish.
I love it. I love the indignation. As I understand it, and Perry is quite right on his initial analysis there, as I understand, it's not that the Royal Navy don't want to do it. They will do as they're told. I don't think there's any mechanism to do it. This is their argument. There's only one big boat that we own now, if this is about collecting people on a boat, so presumably you would collect 1,000. I don't know whether you'd wait there for the next 1,000. That's a lot of people to add, even on a big boat. And that boat is currently in action elsewhere. Where do you physically get the boat to make it happen? The French are kicking off. We shouldn't worry too much about the French kicking. They would kick off at anything, of course. You know, they will strike, they will get moody. We know that the police officer who was in the Channel the other day when Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, went out there, and Chris said to him, what do you do to stop them getting on the boats? And the copper said, we tell them, don't do this. Ooh, don't do this. Quick, Scarpa, boys, we've been told not to do this. Yeah, that works a treat, doesn't it? 0344 499 1000. This one from Margaret in Birmingham says, Ian, Andy Burnham pops down to Dover. I see no boats, no economic migrants, nothing to see here. I'm off on my holiday, Bobs. Bye. P.S. I remember Sajid Javid interrupted his holidays when the boats first started crossing. He did. We played that clip the other day of him talking about what a crisis this was. And here we are 10 years later, pretty much. Nothing has really changed. Lots to get through here. Let's speak with David Wooding, columnist at The Sun, political journalist of many years. David, morning to you.
Morning, Ian.
Nice to have you with us, as ever. Let's start then with this interesting sort of right-wing pact story. All business, including dirty business, is done now on social media, not secret clandestine meetings in North London restaurants, not little powwows in a pub near Westminster. None of that. Just stick it on a public forum. Let everybody see what we're arguing about. And that seems to be what's happened here. Rupert Lowe releases his video on Sunday. Nigel Farage responds to it at a press conference on Monday. Then there's the point that he said he would apparently call Rupert Lowe and didn't. Rupert Lowe's saying he's a liar. Rupert's now released what looks like a flipping essay of a response, again on Twitter. I don't know whether it's falling apart. I don't think this is going anywhere anyway. I wasn't ever quite sure why Rupert Lowe thought it might. What's your assessment of this curious case of right-wing shenanigans?
Well, it sounds like he's not very good at doing a deal. If you want to do a deal, you're polite to people, you talk behind the scenes, you keep everything under wraps until you've signed on the dotted line. What on earth he's doing, airing his dirty washing in public over the bits they're niggling over, astonishes me, really. This is no way to go a deal. What about politics? Supposed to be a politician. A politician does things in a more considered way than this.
The problem with it is that you bring the crowd with you, don't you, to your own argument. So you end up in this kind of sort of digital amphitheatre of, you know, the Rupert Lowe supporters and the Nigel Farage, and then they start arguing out. If anybody could be bothered to go and look, you would probably find there's now 2,000 separate conversations and chats that have emerged from this, where other people are arguing in the corner. There's another group arguing over there. I mean, imagine if you did this in real life. So, right, we're all going to go to Wembley and discuss Rupert Lowe's video, and 10,000 people showed up to have a row. I mean, it's a Monty Python sketch.
It is, and you know, it's clear that Rupert Lowe doesn't like Nigel Farage, which is probably why he left Reform UK in the first place and set up his own party. They've shown antipathy towards each other throughout the split, and it's Rupert Lowe who's made the overtures towards Nigel Farage. So why has he now turned it on its head and started having a go at him? It's absolutely bizarre.
It is bizarre.
He's the one who wants to do the deal, and the next minute he's firing salvos at him. The other thing is he lays down these strict rules for having a deal. You know, bring back the death penalty, sack 2 of your prize defectors, and you know, let's stop Islamification of Britain. All things which perhaps are over the edge of the cliff that Nigel Farage has very adeptly stayed on the right side of during his political career. And one of the reasons why Rupert Lowe left Reform UK in the first place.
What's interesting about this is, I mean, this is a wider point, I suppose, about sort of right-wing thinking. The Tory party aren't really in this conversation, and whilst they don't want to be, I mean, the idea that Kemi Badenoch would suddenly also pitch in and go, no, you're a liar, and then suddenly there's going to be a, you know, no, you're a liar. That's not going to happen, but there's no benefit to her in this. It's not as if people are looking at, well, particularly Restore. I think Reform are behaving with dignity on this. I don't think, you know, Nigel gave a good press conference and I thought responded really well to everything. I don't think he's done anything wrong here. However, you might think in the melee in any other world of this happening, people would go, no, I'm going to go back to the Tories. But, of course, the Tories don't cut it for the supporters of, certainly not the supporters of Restore, and hardly at all for the supporters of Reform.
Yeah, it's going to have to be a long game for Kemi Badenoch, because while she's done really well and she's showing real zeal for the job and she's landing lots of blows and looking like the real deal now, it's the brand of the Conservative Party which she's got to clean up. And that's not going to happen overnight. People have long memories and they've only been out of power for 2 years. So that's going to be a long job. So Kemi Badenoch will be hoping that Andy Burnham goes all the way to 2029. The same goes for Burnham. I would suspect although he says there's going to be no early election, it would be wise for him to go sooner. He will lose some of his majority, but nevertheless, he'll secure another 5 years and a mandate for himself at a time when the two parties of the right are knocking lumps out of each other. The Conservatives are still not rehabilitated, and he's provided a bounce for the Labour Party.
I wonder whether that is the preferable option for the Conservatives, that Andy Burnham calls an election within the next year. I mean, it means that Kemi Badenoch's going to be in opposition for another 5 years, but she's not, you know, based on current polling, there's not really a chance she's going to win an outright general election if Mr Burnham called one tomorrow or next year. But there is a possibility that if he called one next year and won, that would completely change the position of Restore, who some suggesting they just simply would disappear, they wouldn't carry on. Nigel Farage might say, I've done my bit, I'm standing aside now for somebody else. That could lead the way for Kemi Badenoch to emerge. But that's a long old plan. That's over half a decade's worth of sitting there on the opposition benches. Maybe she's prepared for that fight.
And we're assuming, of course, that the Conservatives would keep Kemi Badenoch in place and let her have another run, like the Labour Party did with Neil Kinnock.
Yeah, that's a good point. What's interesting about all of this, and we'll come on to the early release thing in a moment, but just it's timely just to mention that Andy Burnham's only been in the job a couple of weeks. He's gone on holiday, David. I mean, is that normal stuff? I know it's normal for most people in the summer to go on holiday, but when you're the Prime Minister and you've only been there a fortnight, I mean, I can't imagine many people turning up to a job and getting the job and then booking their holiday 2 weeks in.
Yeah, and he's doing this at the moment when we have the early release scheme revealed that the killers of Andrew Harper will be released early after all. Well, I think it was a few days ago only that Andy Burnham said, I'm going to pause this and have a look at it. Yeah, well, he can pause anything he likes, but if he doesn't fix it, then it's not going to have much of an impact on the voters. It is a bad look. Having said that, it's the summer recess, and he does need to get some energy together for the task ahead. Yeah. But a lot of people will be saying, well, he's inherited a country in several crises. He should be here sorting this out. And does he have a plan? Has he retreated to the deck chair to sit and work out what his plan is? Because so far, all we've seen is a few sweeties, which are quite cheap and relatively cheap and easy. Don't change the country very much. 86p a week off your energy bill, £2 bus fares, and a few pledges that have not been funded. So he really does need to go and have a plan about how he's going to fix the economy and how he's going to solve the migration crisis. Because, of course, all we've heard from him on that is more needs to be done. Yes, he keeps saying more needs to be done, but we need to know what that more is.
I'm surprised at this, because I thought that, because he didn't speak about immigration at all. He did the Koonsberg interview. She didn't ask him, curiously, about immigration. Just didn't come up, and I thought, hang on, this is a really pivotal and very important part of what the British public feels strongly about. If any of the polling will tell you, immigration is right up there at the moment, legal and illegal immigration. So it's not just the channel crossings. And I thought Burnham's keeping his powder dry on this one. He's going to come up with an absolute corker. He's had a lot of time to think about it. It might not be the resolution ideally we want, but it will be fundamental. It will be big. And he will say something that no Labour leader has, or Tory leader for that matter, has ever said. So it'll be a plan initiative. It won't be one in, one out. It'll have some teeth. It'll be meaningful. We can understand it. And in the event, when he eventually decides to speak about it, he nips down to Dover for half an hour, stands there behind, with the White Cliffs behind him, and announces absolutely nothing, Dave. No, I mean, nothing. Really a repeat of Keir Starmer. He talks about these iffy numbers, that, well, numbers have gone down, as if that's anything to do with some brilliant plan that Labour had. Nothing of the sort. So we haven't heard a thing on this one. It's not in his DNA, we know that. It's not like, for him personally, it doesn't keep him awake at night, this one. But it is pivotal, and he's been silent.
Yes, I mean, his modus operandi seems to be, I'm a much more cheerful, pleasant chap than the dull, hard Keir Starmer. And that has had an impact. People feel a little bit more hopeful because he's a cheerful chappy and he's quite likeable. But, being cheerful doesn't solve problems. He needs a plan. And there's a suspicion among some people that, like Keir Starmer, he's walked into number 10 without a plan. And if he has, then he is going to run into trouble sooner rather than later.
Indeed. One of the plans, of course, that's been put forward from Reform is this idea of using the Royal Navy, Marines, Army, RAF personnel, whatever is needed. A joint command would combine all of that. They've unveiled Operation Fortress, promising to stop all small boat channel migrants within a fortnight, Dave. I mean, this is ambitious stuff. One of the issues that has spiked some disagreement, not on the fundamentals, but I think the Navy issue is seen by many naval personnel as a problem, because we don't really have much Navy infrastructure anymore, like boats, for example.
Yeah, exactly, because the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who used to be the Defence Secretary, was suddenly caught out on that one last year when we needed warships to go out towards the Gulf. And we realised just how threadbare the Royal Navy and indeed the rest of our armed forces are, which is why there's this demand to spend an extra £9 billion a year on the armed forces to beef them up, ready to face the threat from Russia and China. So the idea of using them to stop migrant boats in flimsy dinghies crossing the channel does seem a little bit odd. But nevertheless, it shows how serious Nigel Farage is about tackling this problem. And the other parties so far, well, certainly the government hasn't shown much initiative in the way of the one in, one out deal. We've paid £1 billion to France to stop the boats, and 2,000 migrants have landed in the 2 weeks that Andy Burnham's been Prime Minister. I love we're just, for those who are watching us as opposed to listening to us, you'll be looking at some images now. I hadn't actually clocked this before, so this is when the Prime Minister went to Dover on Sunday, and the images we're seeing is some sort of marine type border force character showing Andy Burnham what a boat is. It's a dinghy. Look, Prime Minister, this is a dinghy. Look, he's touching the dinghy, and he's I don't know who's that with him, Christian. Do we know? He's got somebody with him there, Dave. I don't know either who it is. And Andy's standing there with his hands in his pockets, listening diligently to the border man explaining what a dinghy is. What a lesson! What a life lesson for the Prime Minister. Oh yeah, there you go. I mean, it's clearly what we call in the business a photo op, isn't it? Yeah. Again, as you say, he didn't say anything, but he posed for the cameras. Perhaps he'll pop down to the local pub and tell us which is the favourite snacks he likes in the pub. Yeah. Before he goes home. Yeah. I mean, in fairness, he's been very good on these clips, these social media clips. And that, again, is making him seem like a more approachable, likeable person. one of us, as it were. He goes for a pint, he goes to the football. He's a normal bloke, and that does have an impact, and that's clearly part of his strategy.
Yeah, it's very awkward just watching him listening to this lecture on what a boat is. What he should have done is taken his shoes off, rolled his trouser legs up and said, sod this, I'm going to do a filp and jump in the drink and get straight in the channel and start getting busy. He's now being shown a drone, by the way.
Yeah, I've got to say it doesn't look very much like a boat, that one, but...
That's right, yeah.
Yes, Prime Minister.
You can get 7 on that, I reckon.
How does it float, officer? Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was just do you remember when Margaret Thatcher covered up the British Airways logo on that model plane, Dave?
I was there when it happened.
Were you there? I love it when you say things like this. It was a great moment.
Yes.
Yeah. I was just reminded that the last time a Prime Minister was shown something aeronautical at close range, and there it is. So he's gone on holiday, so he's not going to solve that crisis. I doubt whether he's also going to say very much in the next week about the latest on the early release programme, which we alluded to at the beginning, Dave. We know that the killers of PC Andrew Harper are still on the list to be released as part of this early release programme. His widow has called this disgusting. She's responding with rage on this one. Lissy Harper called the prospect disgusting, an affront to justice and utter betrayal of victims.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely right. It is. And when the Prime Minister said a few days ago that he would pause the early release scheme to find out what he could do to stop this, and then a few days later says, sorry, I tried my best, I would like to go further. And then he tries to sell it as we're going to stop rapists and serious sex offenders. That doesn't mean they're going to do anything about paedophiles or violent offenders, or indeed cop killers. And in this case, the fact that 2 of the 3 killers are being released early will just astonish people.
Yeah.
Why couldn't that have been included in his list of no-go areas? You know, he said it would be serious sexual offenders and rapists. Why couldn't they say also anybody who had murdered a 999 operator?
Yes, yeah. I mean, bearing in mind that new laws were in place very recently about increasing the sentences for those who had attacked and certainly killed emergency workers, that's police officers and paramedics, fire officers, etc. You might have thought that would automatically have been on the list, but apparently not. David, we hit the clock. Great to see you. Enjoy the rest of the day. It's going to be another sunny one out there. He's David Wooding, columnist at The Sun and political journalist of many, many years. He's been around the Westminster block. Always good to have him on with us. Let's get a voice note. We've got plenty of those to come. 0344 499 1000. This comes from Daniel on small boats. Morning, Dan.
Good morning, Ian. It's Daniel from Epsom here. I think what this Labour government doesn't really get, and the last government didn't really get it either, is that most of the British majority out there, it's not that we want legal and safe routes. We don't want any illegal immigration whatsoever. We want it stopped. We want mass deportations, and we want legal immigration to be extremely selective and in very, very low numbers. You know, so talking about safe and legal routes, it tells me that Burnham isn't listening. I think Labour are unwilling, or Labour won't protect British borders, and Labour will not protect British people. We need an urgent change. Thanks, Ian.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, morning. 27 minutes after 7. It's Talk Breakfast. Ian Collins in for Jezza for the next couple of weeks. On that issue of getting nicked speeding, it's not speeding really if you're doing 23 miles an hour in a 20. You're just going slightly over a brand new man-made idea of what constitutes an offence. Betty says most fines are for 20 miles an hour now, only around 2% for over 80. It's purely revenue. Same with the average speed and air quality, 50 mile an hour zones. But a murderer can be released early. It's a fair point as well. And this one from Nobody on social media says, Ian, I remember the ads, hit me at 30 and I'll survive. It's 30 for a reason. Now it's 20 for a reason. To cash grab from motorists. This is a story that Linda LaPlante has just lost her licence for 6 months. She did it 5 times. But all of those offences happened when she was doing like 24, 25 miles an hour in a 20. She was not speeding. This was a road that half an hour ago was 30. And just nabbing over the man-made new limit does not make you dangerous speeding. It's crazy. Banning people, it's up there with cancelling people. We're going to ban you for this because you breached the new speed limit. You tried to... Do you know I got caught on Operation Brock on the M20 yesterday? It's where they sort of divide the motorway up to allow for heavy traffic going into the tunnel down there at Folkestone. So you end up in one of those 50 mile an hour zones for what seemed like several weeks, frankly. I felt I was there longer than a prime ministerial holiday. I was just... There I was. I stuck the cruise control on and I did 45 for, I swear, for about half an hour. I thought, is this ever... It's like I was in the Twilight Zone episode. The Road to Nowhere, Chris Rea playing my ears. Where am I going with this? I've got 2 kids in the back saying, take us to the zoo, Daddy. And when we get to the zoo, there's no flipping animals. It's too hot for them to come out. Just a little message there if you're thinking of taking your kids to the zoo. Check the lions. Oh, no, they're in the bush. Why are they in the bush? Because it's 32 degrees. What would you do if you were a lion? That's how they roll, quite literally. 0344 499 1000. Thoughts on that? I want to bring this story into play as well. Benefit claimants are being offered discounts on holidays and sex toys under deals involving some of Britain's biggest brands. Anxious and neurodiverse claimants can also benefit from reduced prices on luxury watches, jewellery and designer clothes through private sector schemes designed for disabled people. Let's speak with Joanna Marchong, Senior Analyst at Onward. Joanna, good morning to you. I was trying to, I give the benefit of the doubt to any story I read because I'm often willing to believe that the headline betrays the detail, and sometimes that is true. There is a little bit more in the detail. Holidays and sex toys, I don't even like talking about it at breakfast time, frankly, but there we go. This is the reality. What is it within the world of anxiety or neurodiversity that requires a discount on a dildo?
Well, I mean, the benefit system has been broken for a very long time. Earlier this year, Onward pointed out that there's actually £10 billion a year in hidden benefits and hidden extras, you should say. Yes. So free prescriptions, council tax discounts, warm home discounts, social tariffs, all that kind of stuff. And now we've realised the benefit system isn't just about cash payments. It's also a somewhat membership and a status symbol where, unfortunately, now we've broken through another barrier where private companies have realised 1 in 4 people are better off on universal credit. We've got the record high amount of graduates out of employment but claiming benefits. So realistically, who in this economy has money? Obviously, a private company will say, well, we want to get that kind of clientele because they're the people ready to spend. And it just breaks open the system entirely to show how far we've come from what it was designed to do, which is help people who genuinely need help. So the retail world, the private sector retail world, has realised that there is a whole clientele
that has some cash, and of course it doesn't take much to stick a poster up saying something's discounted, whether it is the aforementioned toys or whether it is holidays or whatever. And they are simply, I suppose it's the capitalist game in action in all of its warts and all form.
Yeah, obviously the market will respond. We're at a point where businesses are struggling with sales because of all the, look at the jobs tax, look at the record high tax burden that many people are facing. So obviously they're going to look there. What I think is the main issue is that the government has let our welfare system be used and abused. We have record number of people on it. There's been an expanding range of people signing up for these benefits, things that we can obviously argue that with at-home appointments and phone-in appointments, we don't actually know if they are seriously verifying that they have these conditions in the first place. There's major cliff edges. So a lot of the time, these people on benefits, every extra pound you earn at your job, you'll then lose 50% of it. You'll lose 50p of it. There's a lack of incentive here that's specifically brought on by the system at play. And if we don't have a stronger prime minister, I mean, Keir Starmer tried to cut the welfare bill and tried to make serious reforms. He couldn't do it. If we don't have someone in power that can actually deliver these reforms, then we're just going to go in an endless circle and we'll have more things like this cropping up.
Everyone seems to have sort of given it a go. I mean, I guess you could argue Ian Duncan Smith got closest to maybe at least starting the conversation in a serious way. And he did this, I think, largely when he was in opposition. Having not succeeded in becoming Prime Minister, but dedicated a lot of years to trying to look at this story. Everybody agrees with the principle of it. Nobody can seem to put it fully in place.
Yeah, I mean, that's the system we're living in now, where we have so many areas failing in our economy. Again, so if you look at it from each and every way, businesses, job vacancies are at their record low for graduates right now. That's new Indeed data that came out this morning on the FT. So you have that. People can't get jobs. Businesses can't offer jobs because they've got the jobs tax. They've had the employment rights bill put onto them. We've had rising costs across the board, whilst we have a government pledging more spending and trialing and erroring how the public will respond to different kinds of tax rises, even if they package it up in terms of a levy. So what we have is a system broken from so many different angles. And right now, the only solutions on the table are spending. And people will obviously see a system and they will say, look, if this is the only way I can do my job, I can have a basic standard of living, they will sign up to it. You can have people on universal credit that still have to work, but even those people are trapped in a system because, as I said, every pound they make above a certain threshold, they will be losing pretty much half.
Yeah, and no politician really wants to put their name to, the idea that you're making somebody worse off. Potentially worse off, and particularly a Labour politician, of course, because it's more in their political DNA to be allegedly mindful of this stuff, because of course on the left you are a far nicer, more caring person, and you were appointed by God.
Perfect. I don't know how to add to that. Pretty much, you summed it up. I mean, Labour's always been the party of, helping the working person, the everyday person. But at what point is enough enough? Yeah. And there needs to be some tough love to actually get things working. Because at the end of the day, there are winners and losers. And even these people stuck on universal credit, because it's not necessarily their fault that the system has taken away their incentives. Even these people stuck will soon realize that they are, Labour aren't doing them justice and they aren't actually giving them what they need to survive. Lifetime earnings for these graduates who can't get jobs in the first 2 years of being out of school, lifetime earnings drop drastically for them. And we also have to think about how our economy works in the later rungs of it. Who's paying state pension? Yeah. We were talking about social care, where graduates are supposed to be paying for this as well. So we need a working economy. We have an aging population. What's going to happen there? There are these big questions that are now being brought up because of these simple triggers and levers that the government are refusing to pull.
Indeed. Joanna, thank you for your time. Good to see you again. Joanna Marchong, senior analyst at Onward. This comes from Keith in Nottingham with reference to this story. So benefit claimants are being handed sex toys along with their handouts. I think this will, to Alarm Clock Britons, be hard to swallow, and the feeling will vibrate across the country. From Keith in Nottingham. I mean, Chubby Brown could have written that, couldn't he? That's so laden with double entendre. I absolutely love it. There's a real buzz about this story. So if you, I mean, we could just go on, couldn't we? Tough love. I think that's what's required. Do keep them coming in. We will decide whether they can be legally read out. There is the difference. Lots more to come. 0344 499 1000. Steve says apparently the new stance on safe driving is that it's safer to consistently stare at your speedometer than the road. That and consistently searching for inadequate speed limit signs. Yes. There's a whole load of that. I do wonder about the average. On the Operation Brock thing I was talking about on the M20, if you're a regular driver in that neck of... This is in Kent, by the way. This takes you from essentially South London just into Kent, all the way down to the coast. So you've got the M2 or the M20. So you're on the M20. And it says average speed camera check. So that's why you think, was there a camera at the beginning? Because there's got to be one at the beginning and one at the end, hasn't there, to be able to clock whether you defied the average. And you never know. You always think, do I give it a go? Do I just... Because once in a while a car just bombs past you and you think, what does he know that I don't know? Has he got some kind of intel on the cameras? Does his mate work for the highways people? No cameras on there, mate. They ain't working. I have no idea. I do know it's painful on a motorway to be... And by the way, the Operation Brock thing, which is meant to alleviate the trucks going abroad, there were no trucks on that part of the... I know in busy times it's rammed, and the science behind it apparently works really well. I'm not complaining about the principle, because it does ultimately alleviate a problem. But when you're in it and you've got two kids in the back and it's hot and they want to get somewhere... I speak for the thousands of fellow motorists that were there yesterday experiencing the same thing. And that's in a 50, but 50 on a motorway feels really slow. A 20-mile-an-hour zone. Came across one of those as well as I moved towards the Ashford area. Now, that was past a school, but of course the school holidays are there, so there's no school going on. It was a completely empty road. There was no one around. I thought for 1 second I'd reached the end of time, because I couldn't... I kept thinking, not only am I not seeing any... You know, have these moments every now and again. I'm driving the car, I can't see any other cars, can't see any other people either. Where's the people? What's happened in this village? There's no one around. The shops is like some kind of Stephen King novel. It was unusually quiet. And there's me pootling along at 19 miles an hour with not a soul around. There was nothing to hit if you were a bad driver. There were no school kids running out because it's the holidays. There was no one in and out of shops, crossing roads. It was utterly bizarre. And I'm keeping to 19 miles an hour. It would have been quicker in a bumper car. I've been on faster ones of those. 0344 499 1000. More from you on the way. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back. 20 to 8, Talk Breakfast with Ian in for Jezza. It's a Tuesday morning, it's bright and sunny still. We won't be saying this in a couple of months when climate change ceases to change and it just becomes autumn and it gets a bit chilly, and then winter and it gets a bit cold. It'll change again. Chris says, Ian and Benedict. Benedict Spence was with us a little earlier. Burnham is proof of the old adage, you can tell when a politician is lying because their lips move. Do these people really believe the nonsense they spout? Are they prevented from seeing TV or reading the news? I think all the boats come across the Straits of Dover, which at its narrowest point is about 20 miles. Once you get either side of the strait, it becomes almost impossible for these overloaded boats to cover the distance. We managed to stop the Nazis crossing to invade us. Surely it's not beyond the wit of government and military chiefs to police this stretch of water. I've said precisely this forever. I mean, of all the things, I don't want to go through the tired old list of what innovation does and engineering and brilliance and smart thinking to get to this point in the 21st century where we could do so many things, and artificial intelligence and the kind of vehicles we drive, the apps on our phones, our lives are automated in ways we could not previously imagine. Things have been invented to accommodate, to ease jip, stress and hassle. And we can't stop a rubber boat coming over the channel. That seems curious to me. We'll come back to that, more of your stories on the way. And by the way, the Home Secretary says, no, you're not really getting the full story. We've actually got quite a lot of success here. There's 1,000 people a day at the moment, Shabana, coming over the channel. Which bit of that do you not get? Is that meant to be success? Let's also move back to this story of early release. We know that PC Harper, he was the officer that was dragged to his death by 3 horrendous characters in charge of a car. They were done for manslaughter in the end. They're still on the list for early release. His widow, Lissy, has said she's disgusted by this. Rapist and child sex offenders will be barred, we understand, from early release, but not those who've killed police officers in the most horrific fashion. Peter Bleksley joins us, big friend of the station and the show, former Met detective. No words, Peter, really, when we talk about stories such as this. It doesn't take much. A Prime Minister could simply, with a swipe of a pen, say, sorry, that group is not included in early release. So far, Mr Burnham has not done this.
Well, once again, it appears that this once great nation is led by a politician whose ambition outstrips his ability. But let me just rewind, if I may, just a few short years and remind your wonderful audience of the utter brilliance of the dedication of the public servant that Andrew Harper was. He was approaching the end of his shift. He'd returned to his station. Police officers then take off their kit, change out of their uniform and make their way home. As Andrew Harper's doing exactly that, a call comes in that there is a theft in progress of a quad bike. Andrew Harper, who the following day was supposed to be on annual leave to begin his honeymoon, with no consideration for himself whatsoever, actually went out and answered that call with all the haste he could apply. And as a result of that selfless act of dedicated, loyal public service, he lost his life.
And the finer details of it don't need to be rebroadcast, Peter, but this was, you know, almost as horrific as one could imagine, being dragged for over a mile by a piece of rope attached to your leg that was attached to a car. And, those that were at the scene will never, ever get over what they were met with. These men knew this was the case. Their argument, of course, was that they didn't set out to kill him, and so therefore it was a manslaughter charge, which, OK, that's what the law says. That still doesn't mean that you are due to be released early from your sentence. If that crime doesn't warrant being kept in for the length of time you were sentenced, I really don't know what does, Peter Bleksley.
Well, now, of course, because of the brilliant and dedicated campaigning by Andrew Harper's widow, Lissy, the law has been changed. Those who kill police officers will serve their sentence, but that law will not be applied retrospectively. So it's too late for the hero Andrew Harper. And let's also remember that these 3 defendants, one of whom received a longer sentence, so he will stay in for a couple more years, they absolutely ridiculed the entire court process, heaping further hurt and upset on Andrew Harper's loved ones. They stuck 2 fingers up at the criminal justice system. And they can sue me if they want, but I confidently predict that none of these 3 will come out from prison reformed, rehabilitated, and willing to re-enter society and contribute, work hard, pay their taxes. I bet they don't. And I would be fairly confident in suggesting that at some point in future years, one or maybe all of those 3 might find themselves back in a court of law for other offences.
Yeah, it does. It's got all the hallmarks, hasn't it? I know there's some, you know, I'm sure those on the left, Peter, say, oh, you two are just stereotyping people. Everyone has a right to reform themselves. I've got a funny feeling you're on the money on this, Peter.
Oh, the left can say what they like as far as I'm concerned. Most of those that I've met are, generally speaking, unhinged beyond repair. But let me just point out, I know many people that have served lengthy jail terms and have come out and then reinvented themselves completely. They've gone on to be beacons in their communities as they've set up companies, worked very hard, employed people, because they learned the error of their ways and they vowed never to go back to prison again. But of course, so many of those people, for them, the beginning of their process of rehabilitation was the very sobering act of being sentenced to prison in court proceedings that they respected. That was their awakening moment. That was the beginning of them turning their lives around. These 3 defendants that were responsible for Andrew Harper's death showed no such respect to anybody or anything or any aspect of the system.
And connected to this, just a final point, Peter, this comes from Brian. He says, morning, great show. This is from the BBC News Channel. Prisoners who commit rape, grooming and serious child sex offences will be excluded from the scheme for England and Wales, the government announced on Monday. Brian says, completely reasonably, could someone explain what a non-serious child sex offence is? Frankly, such a thing doesn't exist in my view. That's a fair point, Peter Bleksley.
Yes, it is, and I suppose some within the criminal justice system would say that Hugh Edwards was responsible for a non-serious criminal child sex offence because he was caught in possession of indecent images of children. So, number one, it qualifies as a child sex offence, but number 2, in the eyes of some, it may not be serious. For me, it is unbelievably experienced, and the fact that that vile man did not go to prison is an absolute scandal.
Indeed. Peter Bleksley, thank you. Former Met detective with us. Let's get a word with Ian Duncan-Smith. Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, former Conservative Party leader, of course. Ian, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, good morning.
Nice to have you with us as ever. I mean, on this early releasing, nobody can seem to get this thing right. I mean, I can't help but think with so many things in life, whether we're talking about channel crossings or early release, is it really beyond the wit of mankind to come up with something that is satisfactory, reasonable, and shows that justice is still being done?
Yeah, I mean, I found the government meandering through this one in a constant set of panic over what they're about to release. The fact is, I don't understand why you would release murderers and rapists full stop anyway. They are in the violent crime area of criminality, and that is at the top end of it, and they are the worst sort of people that you could possibly imagine. So why are they even contemplating early release of those type of criminals? If they had to early release, it should be at the bottom end of the criminal fraternity, which blocks up the prisons, which are some of the smaller misdemeanors. Now, don't get me wrong. Antisocial behaviour, shoplifting are very, very nasty affairs. And really, in all honesty, we shouldn't be releasing anybody. In fact, we should try to get more people into prison who are committing those offences. But if the government is, and it's their plan, to early release, the answer is you do not release those who need to be punished severely, and that is in the violent and the threatening category, which is at the top end of the criminality code. And I just don't understand why this government has got itself bogged down in this stupid idea to try and release these people in the first place. I mean, what a rapist is apparently now more dangerous than a murderer. A rapist is a vile criminal who uses violence to get their ways, and a murderer is a vile criminal who uses violence to end somebody's life. They should never be released.
Well, I mean, it's almost cartoony, isn't it? It's almost satirical. The idea that the fact that here we are, two grown men having this conversation about who should come out early from jail. I mean, it's bonkers.
Yeah, and it's all down to the government's panic about prison numbers. We haven't been building enough prisons, that's true. But at the same time, we should be getting on and building incarceration centres. That means we can put some of the lesser criminality into those, not release them, and have the major Category A prisons for the violent prisoners and have more spaces. But the truth is, right now, the government's in a complete shambolic mess. It's a bit like migration. They keep saying they've got a plan, and at the end of the day, we get more and more of these characters coming across the seas, trying to land in the UK. We are losing control of the fundamental facets of government, which is protect the British public from threats abroad and from threats at home. And that is the collapse of what the government is meant to be doing.
While you're with us, Ian, I'd be failing not to just mention this latest benefit story. I did credit you with a previous guest. I suggested that no single politician has done more to try and address these imbalances, why it's more beneficial for some to not work than work, all that goes with it, universal credit. You spent years studying and looking at this, did real diligent work. You got so far, of course, but of course Parliament often gets in the way of these things. We learned today that benefit claimants are being offered discounts on holidays and sex toys under a deal involving some of Britain's biggest brands. I mean, what sort of, to use the word cartoon again, what sort of crazy headline is this?
Yeah, if it's true, it's about splashing around in the shallow end of political decision-making. This is ridiculous. And the real point is, when I was there, just to finish off, we cut the benefit budget by 25 billion. We got a million people back into work, and long-term unemployment will almost pretty much cease to exist. Now, the real problem is COVID hit after I had left. And everybody sort of panicked and released all this sort of money going into the people. And when you condition people to get money to do nothing, then they will try always to do that.
Yeah.
So the key thing is we have to crack down. We have to get this under control. We have to be saying to this explosion in mental health, you cannot medicalise all the ups and downs of life. People shouldn't be getting money to stay off work if they're on mental health. What they should be doing is being told the best way of helping you for anxiety and depression is get you into work.
Yeah.
So we're going to get you into work and support you in the work, but we're not going to pay you to sit around doing nothing.
Well, this follows, of course, similar sort of benefit claim and discount schemes of private companies offering money for like the Tower of London and London Zoo and the Eden Project and things like that.
You don't need that. I think innate in most people is the desire to fend for themselves, to do the most for them and their families. I don't believe people need to have incentives to find work. Finding work itself is the greatest prize you can ever have because you are independent. That means you can provide for your family. You have the pride of being able to get that first paycheck that tells you you're independent of government. You don't need the government anymore. You have your control yourself. That is what motivates people to go to work. And if you get the right people around them, pushing them, giving them the right sense of direction, then most people will go to work. If you start giving them gimmicky accessories, that is not just a joke, it's a tragedy because it shows the focus of government is in the wrong place. Get them back to work, for God's sake.
Absolutely right. Just a final point. We've only got 20 seconds, Ian, but, our Prime Minister's only been there 2 weeks. He's gone on holiday. Look, every politician deserves a holiday. I get that. I understand. It does seem a little bit lively to be legging it off to the sun when you've only been there a fortnight.
Well, he goes on holiday, comes back on holiday. The key question really here in all of this is how have we now got a Prime Minister who has never appeared in the House of Commons, has not been interrogated, avoids any serious questioning of any of the policies, has deliberately been planned so that he would arrive too late to stand in the dispatch box, has now all of the summer to parade around making statements which we cannot get to the bottom of how he's going to afford these things. He talks one thing here and another there in the middle of the boats and all the rest of it. And the reality is we are in a mess. And Parliament should be recalled to interrogate the Prime Minister to make sure that we know what he's talking about, and does he understand how tough this is on ordinary people if they have no idea where this government is going.
It's a spot-on point to finish on. Sir Ian Duncan-Smith, thank you. Great to have you on with us, former Conservative Party leader. Thank you to him. It's 8 o'clock. Coming up, let's get the latest news headlines next.
I think what he suspects is that the leadership of Reform is in trouble with all these scandals, apparent scandals over donations. Reform, nevertheless, is well known across the country. Reform as a vehicle is capable, if it has the right leadership, of actually forming a government. And that with the weakened leadership of Reform, there's a risk that Reform itself will be lost. And he doesn't want to lose the potential of a vehicle that could provide the kind of government that he and I and others wish this country to have.
Okay. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is therefore my honour to declare that the duly elected leader of the Labour Party is Andy Burnham.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much. I believe in all of you, and I am confident we can do it. Thank you very much. I have just come from Buckingham Palace, where I have accepted His Majesty the King's invitation to form a government. I know people at home are fed up with politics. I hear you, and I want to be honest with you. We have not been good enough, and we need to be better. We will be.
This man has no mandate whatsoever. He didn't stand on the 2024 general election manifesto. You cannot make the biggest change in British politics in 40 years without a mandate from the British people, and it will be only decent, right and proper to call a general election on that issue and to do it now.
Our fifth Prime Minister in 4 years. Blimey. And, well, very little.
I think Burnham has to walk a fine line. I think that's probably what's going on, because if he were to sweep into Downing Street and say, I'm going to change everything, I'm going to fix everything, I'm going to do things completely differently to Starmer, then people would say, hold on, mate, we need a general election in that case, because no one voted for that. No one voted for you to be Prime Minister. You weren't standing in the 2024 general election. We've never seen your manifesto. Who the hell are you? That's what people would be asking.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Yeah, good morning. Welcome back. It is the home of Common Sense. Ian Collins in for Jezza here for a couple of weeks. He's off for a fortnight, much like Andy Burnham is off. Although Andy Burnham's only been in the job for 2 weeks. He's legged it to the sunshine down on the Costa. We're discussing that as well. Is it okay? I mean, it's okay for Prime Minister to have a holiday, isn't it? I'm not quite sure that quick. Also, top of the list this morning, the killers of PC Harper remain on the list to be released early. We hear that rapists and child sex offenders will not be released. Where is the line that is drawn on early release? I mean, frankly, I think most people would say none of the above should be released early. That is not the point of justice. It's not how it should work. We continue, of course, on the Rupert Lowe right-wing pact saga. It continues apace. Mr. Lowe suggesting that Nigel Farage was meant to phone him and then called him a liar. The spat has been conducted, of course, in public on social media. This is a grown man. Mr. Lowe, what are you doing? What are you looking for? What do you really want? You got a dignified response from Nigel Farage yesterday. What is going on? And also the writer of Prime Suspect Linda LaPlante has got herself a speeding ban. She committed several offences over the course of time, all in 20-mile-an-hour zones. Now, she wasn't doing 80 in a 20. She wasn't even doing 30 in a 20. In fact, all of the offences were less than 30 miles an hour. Some were 24 and 25. That ain't speeding. But the state decrees you're banned. It's like cancelling people. Are we banning people from driving for half a year because you went 24 in a 20? Get in the bin. We'll continue to look at that as well. Your thoughts on all of these subjects, 0344 499 1000. And, of course, you can message 87222. Let's get a word on the big stories of the day. Sarah Pochin, MP, joins us. Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby, of course. Morning to you, Sarah.
Good morning. Lovely to be here.
Nice to have you with us. Have you had a secret letter from Rupert Lowe saying, hey, Sarah, do you fancy crossing the line or joining up, something like that? What are you making of all of this?
Oh, well, look, absolutely not. Rupert knows that I'm 100% loyal to Nigel Farage. And, of course, look, we all want, don't we, the parties of the right to make sure that the next government that this country has is a united right-wing government. We are desperate to get rid of the mess that is this Labour government. But the fact is that we want that party to be led, that government to be led by Nigel Farage. You know, Reform has worked so hard now on our ground game. The machinery that is the party now is so professional that we are ready for when that general election comes.
It's fascinating. And I think you're alluding to it there. You can't do this overnight, can you? Reform have worked for years in putting this in place. And, you know, you hit a few bear traps on the way over the years, and then you put that bit right, and you finally get to a point when you say, right, if there was an election tomorrow, we've got the people ready to stand and the machinery in place. And when Restore comes along, and I think Nigel sort of alluded to this in some kind of way. Yep, they've made some incursions. They beat the Tories in the mayoral election in Manchester, although, you know, frankly, I think I could have done that on my own as well. Yeah, they're a presence, and a presence should be taken seriously, and we're a democracy, and that should be taken seriously. So, fine, that's great. If there's enough to go round and people have different views, they're within their rights to stand. But, of course, this first letter, this first video note that he sent to, well, it didn't really send it to Nigel, he put it out in public, which, firstly, I find that a little bit odd, that's how his initial opening salvo was conducted. But he said what he said, and he said it in a very sort of polite way, but he had quite a lot of red lines in there, like, you know, trying to bring back capital punishment and firing high-profile MPs.
Well, yes, quite. Look, Restore is a party much further right than Reform and has no boundaries on the right of its party. And it has people associated with it which Reform do not want in our party. But as I say, you know, it is very important for the key players on the right of the political spectrum to make sure that, you know, in some way the British people are not let down by any infighting, and that when it comes to the next general election, they are able to be represented by a strong, fair right-wing government, which is exactly why I do this job, because that is exactly what I want to see happen under Nigel's leadership.
Nigel did say, of course, we need a broad coalition. What does that mean? Does that mean a pact? What do you take that to mean?
Look, I think all Nigel is saying at this stage is that, of course, you know, we are open to discussions. As I keep saying, the most important thing is we don't let down the British people when it comes to a general election. The last thing we want is to see any vote split on the right and allow this absolute, you know, disaster of a Labour government to continue. But I have to point out again to the British people that, you know, well, they don't need it pointing out, but the last 14 years of a Tory government has given us nothing. In fact, has meant that we've arrived in a state that we're in when it comes to things like our prisons. And of course, one of the big stories today is the early release of prisoners. You know, I take the hardline view that no, that's 20 years a magistrate. If you get a sentence, a custodial sentence, you should be serving that sentence. My view is you should serve that sentence in full. That's why we give those sentences out. You know, where here we are now with Burnham, instead of immediately emptying our prisons of 10,700 foreign national offenders and sending them home to their own prisons with all the expense that it incurs the British taxpayer, that could be done straight away. Whereas no, you know, we hear that, oh, they're going to build 14,000 places by 2031. That's not good enough, because in the meantime, you're going to carry on releasing domestic violence perpetrators. Women are terrified when domestic violence perpetrators are let out of prison. They often don't even know they're coming out of prison.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, this is a major, major issue. And I fully sympathise, obviously, with the situation with PC Harper. You know, what an absolute travesty of justice. Those men have served, what is it, I think 6 years, maybe 7 years of their sentence so far, and they're going to be released in October. How can that be right for they were charged, they were accused of manslaughter, weren't they?
Yes, it was manslaughter, not murder. But even so, right. Serve your sentence.
It can't be right. So look, you know, Andy Burnham, all this talk, no, just bite the bullet and empty our prisons of foreign national offenders. And maybe he could have made that sort of statement before he disappears on holiday. I mean, I've just had 2 weeks holiday. I'm not the new Prime Minister. True. He's been in the job. He's been in the job for 2 weeks and he's going off on a 2-week holiday. What message does that give the British people? And what's he done so far with all the major problems we've got? Oh, he's capping bus fares at £2. Oh, he's, you know, dropping fuel bills by 86 pence a week. He wants to get rid of his new education secretary, Lucy Powell. She's not too worried about maths and English. She's quite happy to let those fall by the wayside from the age of 14. What are we talking about? This is the education of our young people. Of course they have to be doing maths and English till at least 16. This is the sort of stuff that he's talking about whilst Rome is burning. And he decides to go to Dover, doesn't he? And tells us all, oh, there's a problem. Oh, yes, it needs fixing. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Yes, the British people have worked that out long ago. You've just been to Dover and told us there's a problem with the boats. Yeah. What are you going to do about it?
Apologies for the slightly salty language there, but I understand what you were... You probably didn't even realise you said it. But I say that, you know, just for regulation purposes. Listen, let's have a little listen then, Sarah, to Andy Burnham, who doesn't swear in this clip, by the way. Andy Burnham down in Dover. He went there at the weekend because obviously he wants to be seen as the real deal. He wasn't going to make an announcement from a big, ornate armchair in Chequers. He was going to get his hands dirty at the coal face of the problem, or the white face of the problem, the cliffs themselves, as the backdrop to this announcement. Let's have a listen.
the number of crossings is down by 50% this year compared with the same period in 2025. And the month we've just had, July, has been the lowest number for 6 years of people crossing. So clearly progress is being made, but we're not complacent. It's why I am here. So we're just going to be relentless. People want to see this issue addressed. I heard that on the doorsteps in Makerfield, but we also need to build a system that offers safe routes for people as well, because that also takes away the selling point of the gangs.
Now, as far as I can work out on this, Sarah, that was the statement. Every time I've listened to it, which is many, sadly, because I do this for a living, he said precisely nothing in that. I mean, literally nothing. It was full of vacuous platitudes and guff.
Absolutely. We know that Andy Burnham, his heart is in an open border policy. We know that. You know, we know he wants to rejoin the EU and open all the borders into this country. Look, we are a tiny country when you compare us to countries like Australia, and we are unable to secure our borders. What Andy Burnham should be saying to the British people is, I recognise that we now have a situation of a national emergency, that we no longer have secure borders, and that therefore without secure borders our sovereignty is at risk. What is he going to do about it? He has said nothing about what he's going to do about it, and yet Reform, who come out with a very strong policy a couple of days ago, are now criticised. Well, I'll tell you what, the British people want to see action. They want to hear from a future government, from a future Prime Minister that will be hopefully Nigel Farage, that strong action will be taken, that yes, we're going to put the military in the Channel, and we are going to use the best special forces we have in the world, our Marines, our military, to escort those illegal immigrants back to French shores. And what have the French done for us? Oh, they don't like it very much. Well, of course they don't like it very much. They've had over £1 billion, and they've done absolutely nothing. The BBC managed to get a clip of them puncturing one boat. Well, whoopee-doo, French. Of course you're not going to like this policy from Reform. Well, tough, because the British people cannot stomach anymore. They want secure borders. And I should also add that this issue about, oh, well, we don't have enough boats, this is not a long-term situation. All you have to do is secure the Channel and people will stop coming.
Well, it's a great idea, of course, but the one thing you're up against, Sarah, is the French, because they've hit out and said, no, this ain't going to happen. They're saying the proposals would violate sovereignty, their sovereignty, and breach international law.
Well, we all know, don't we, that when it comes to the Channel, whether we're arguing over our fish or these illegal asylum seekers, illegal immigrants, that, you know, there's nothing that the French and the English like more than a bit of a spat. But the fact is, tough, France. Yeah. You're taking our money. You're doing absolutely nothing to help us with this problem. In fact, quite the opposite. You're ushering these illegal immigrants over the Channel into our waters where they come ashore, because the government does not have the will here to turn them back. It's got to stop. You know, this situation is a national emergency. Only Reform will declare it as such, and only Reform will use the force that is necessary to turn these boats back. That's what the British people want to see from their government.
It's interesting you say all of this, because Shabana Mahmood has also been out on the case making announcements, because, you know, people talk about the Channel. We talk about it a lot. We interview yourself and others from interested parties who speak on behalf of British people and talk about it. But apparently we've all missed a trick here, because we didn't realise that despite what you and I might say, despite what all of our listeners and viewers might think, Sarah, the government are actually doing a cracking job. Let's have a listen to the Home Secretary.
I know how frustrating it is to see footage of small boat crossings, like the videos many of us saw last week. But it is easy to see them and think that's the whole story. The truth is, it isn't. We are stopping thousands of attempts to reach this country by small boat, and we are bearing down on the smuggling gangs behind this evil trade.
Right, so there you go. It's just our imagination playing tricks on us, essentially, Sarah? I am intrigued that the Home Office claim they've removed or deported 70,000 people. I was looking at this from the Centre for Migration Control, who've been crunching the numbers. So they say 70,000 people have been deported. These are actually the numbers. 35% of those left without officials even knowing they'd left. So these are people who just went back to their place of birth. 26% were paid to leave. Just 25% were deported, and 2/3 of those were Europeans. It's not really the track record, I think, that Shabana Mahmood is, or the gloss that Shabana Mahmood is putting on this thing.
Look, you know what? The British people don't buy that type of promotional video from the Home Secretary, and she should surely be more politically aware to know that that will be of no comfort to the people in constituencies riddled with HMOs in their communities, knowing that they have no idea what young men are living now amongst their children, their daughters. In my constituency of Runcorn and Helsby, I get told stories of what it's like to live next door to a house full of 6, 8 young men who are staring at young girls, following them around parks. It's not acceptable. And obviously I could list, the sexual attacks, the rapes, the murders that we know happen from these illegal immigrants. We know that they are more likely to sexually assault women in this country. It is their culture. And not only that, now we have the very real threat coming from the Iranian regime. We know, don't we, that they are moving some of their operatives over into this country as disguised as asylum seekers on these boats. A very, very serious and very threatening and frightening prospect. So look, this is about terrorism coming into this country. We do not know who are on these boats, but what we do know is that the safety of women and children in this country is at risk, and nobody is going to find any comfort in those lightweight words from Shabana Mahmood.
And if you ask the Home Secretary in a different conversation, or asked anybody in Border Force, why do we need passports and visas and documentation, they would tell you because, well, it's important we know who's coming into a country. We need to know who they are, whether they're legit, whether they're wanted, whether they've committed a crime. That is the answer, and we all understand that. It's a bit of a faff if your passport's about to run out or you've forgotten to do your visa, etc. People run into problems. But we understand broadly that is why the system is there. And yet that entire philosophy gets thrown out of the window for stories such as this. And I say this not for some wokey balance. I'm willing to believe that if you've got a boat of 100 men on it, I'm happy to believe that 99 of them are perfectly reasonable people who mean you no harm at all. The problem is I don't know which one is the one that means me harm. I'm being asked to play Russian roulette with people coming from the Iranian regime or third world cultures, and I don't think that's a fair ask of the British people, which is why we end up with some of the stats you've just alluded to. Listen, Sarah, we hit the clock, but lovely to have you on with us as ever. Thank you for your time. Enjoy your day. Sarah Pochin, Reform UK MP for Runcorn and Helsby. Thank you to her on the issue of small boats. Let's get a voice note from Carl.
Hi, Ian. Carl in Bury. On the migrant crisis, we say, are the Navy able to implement Reform's new policy? Not me funny. If our Navy can't stop a few dinghies coming over, something's seriously wrong, isn't there? Well, long ago that Starmer was bragging that we were going to be ready. We need to be war ready. We're going to be war ready. And now we're saying, oh, do you think our Navy's going to be able to stop a dinghy? Oh, I'm not sure about that. What we're going to do? We might have to buy a couple of boats. It's unbelievable. What's happened to Great Britain? Cheers, pal.
But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a company to run the World Cup remain alive.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, and good morning. Welcome to the home of common sense. So much to get through. Ian Collins in for Jezza for the next couple of weeks, 8:25. John in Lincolnshire says crimes that are like blue collar should be out on community service. Crimes against the person and domestic burglary should not be let out. I don't know why. The only thing I can think, because it's such an obvious... It's a bit of a no-brainer, isn't it? That if that is the position you're taking, who do you release, then you would go for the blue-collar crimes. And that doesn't mean you want to let off fraudsters or anything like that. You could have a robust form of community punishment. Is it because we don't have the personnel to monitor the community punishment? Is that what it is? I mean, the archetypal image of somebody, you know, painting the old folks' home or carrying shopping or digging holes in the local recreation ground, etc. That, you'd need, one would assume, some kind of monitoring to do that. So you'd have to have the personnel. There's some of them out there. Is it that, or is it something else? Let's get a word with Matt Vickers, MP, Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party. Good to see you, Matt.
Good morning, Ian.
Nice to have you with us, as ever. I mean, just on this point of early release, and, you know, the Conservatives have been through this as well. I'm not suggesting it's easy if you run the Justice Department, working out who's, you know, should be released, who shouldn't. I think the overarching feeling is, well, if you've been sentenced, there shouldn't be such a thing as early release.
Yeah, well, there's a justice system there. There are judges there who give people sentences and they give them for a reason. Of all the horrific things this government has done, allowing these people out early has to be the most atrocious. You've seen 60,000 people already released through the early release scheme. We're now seeing, I mean, Burnham's big change to this is review. The end result is that serious child sex offenders will not be released early. What sort of sexual offence against a child is not serious?
Yeah.
Such a thing. If you've committed a sexual offence against a child, you should be locked up as long as the judge says you should. The killers of Andrew Harper, the most vile, evil killers, are released early. It's just not acceptable. A victim of some of the most heinous crimes getting a letter to say, oh, you know, you might have gone through the court, you might have put yourself through hell, you might have been subjected to some of the most awful things by the offenders, but they're getting out early. It is just not acceptable. It needs to be a priority to get these prison places built. And they're doing anything but. This Labour government have actually seen the number of prison places reduced by 450 in the last year. They're releasing them early. They're not going, oh, we've got to get building. They're actually reducing places. We saw a building programme paused, building 3,500 prison places, paused for 18 months through incompetence. It's not acceptable. It needs to be a priority of the government to keep these vile offenders locked up.
Yeah, how hard is it to build a flipping prison, for God's sake? I feel I've done this job long enough, man. I feel I've debated this for decades almost. It's like, have we built one since 1850? Has anything actually been, you know, put in bricks and mortar? I mean, I know some Polish builders, not to stereotype Polish builders, but they're a bit lively with bricks and mortar. They'd have one of those things up in a fortnight. So who are they asking to do these things?
It is madness. But then again, you know what? You look back, history tells you the story. The last Labour government allowed 76,000 offenders to be released. This is the tale as old as time. The priorities of the government are all wrong. We're paying record levels of tax. There's less police on our streets, less teachers in our schools, less places in our prisons. But don't worry, the welfare budget can go up by £18 billion this year. The priorities are all completely wrong. They're not aligned to the things that people out there who are paying that tax want to see the government delivering.
All of that sounds great. I'm bound to ask this, Matt. I'll give you a spoiler alert. Bear trap moment coming up. How many prisons did the Tories build?
14,000 prison places.
I think you say 14,000 prisons. I was saying that. Where are they?
supporting, despite all the. Do you know what the last Conservative government? I would have liked them to have built more. They dealt with the pandemic. They dealt with the economic crisis handed them by the past Labour government. But they made two decisions that put pressure on our prison service. One of them was not to have the mass early release of prisoners during the pandemic. That was the right decision. The other was to toughen up sentences. The Conservatives started locking up sexual and violent offenders for a longer period of time. That was the right thing to do. They embarked, as a result, we saw that pressure on prison prices, and we embarked on the biggest prison building programme since the Victorian era. We were building prisons. This government, if it had just carried on, instead of delaying and dilly-dallying and actually allowing the number of prison places to go backwards, we could be in a very different place. It now needs to be a priority of government. Spend that money building these prison places, keep these vile offenders locked up.
When Kemi Badenoch makes her video that she sends to Nigel Farage saying we're willing to make a pact with you, do you think she'll mention prison places as one of the red lines?
I don't think we're going to see any of those videos anytime soon. We're out there, we're making our pitch to the British people. A lot of them have a lot of questions for Nigel Farage now over his finances. We're going to see those answered hopefully in the coming weeks.
Is that not? I mean, it's kind of interesting watching this play out. I don't know what you make of it as a Conservative. I don't know what the mood is in those meetings with yourself and the other senior members of the Conservative Party in terms of what the significance of this Rupert Lowe reform thing is. We know that you can write off some of this and say, well, it's just Rupert Lowe, it's not serious. He's only got one MP and that's him. But of course, his party did beat you in the last election, the last mayoral election last week. So, I mean, it's significant, right? I mean, there's a knock-on effect and a relevance to all of you in this.
It's horses for courses. I mean, I could start talking about that by-election we had recently in Aberdeen where we won on the back of people wanting to see us drilling in the North Sea, wanting to see that welfare bill brought down, wanting to see people actually be able to go out there and get a job. Horses for courses with these by-elections. People vote in different ways in by-elections. They make choices based on their geography, based on that seat and who they think...
But if you're getting beaten by a party that's only been going 5 minutes, then that's surely a moment where you sit round the table and have a little powwow.
Well, in Manchester, that is the case. We take the message the people of Manchester have given us. We also take the message from the people of Aberdeen, where we won more than 50% of the vote to elect an MP there.
Yeah, it was big. That's fair. But, of course, going forward...
we are the people on the side of people who work hard and do the right thing. If you want a job in oil and gas, you should be supporting us. If you want to see that welfare bill brought down so that businesses can operate and young people can go out there and get a job, it's the Conservative that you should be voting for.
That's reform, isn't it? Isn't that both of those things are reform policies that you've nicked?
The Reform Party wants to nationalise anything that moves. It's quite happy to have lots of discussions about increasing that welfare bill. It can't even make its mind up on the two-child cap. Farage is in, he's out, he's all over the show on it. We will reduce that benefits bill. We will make sure that that money is spent properly. We will put more police on our streets. We are going to reduce the size of the state. We think people can spend their money better than government can. We don't want politicians running every industry in the country. And we don't want so many people away on welfare.
Listen, Matt, all of that sounds fantastic, and I'm not being deliberately mischievous here, but you can understand why many people, many voters go, yeah, but you were there to do some of this and didn't do some of this. We can monkey around with stats about prison places and all the rest of it. But ultimately, the big things, the big calls, the immigration issues around welfare and dependency, the Tories didn't get all of this right. And that's why you're being punished now.
Well, Kemi and I have said what previous governments have got wrong. Lots of it, actually, we've had to say, but we've come up with a real plan. This country needs a leader with a backbone who's going to make the tough decisions that need to be made on welfare, on supporting businesses, axing those business rates for those small businesses on the high streets, putting more police on the streets. Kemi has a real plan. She's done the homework. She knows what needs doing to tackle that border crisis. She's got a commitment to leaving the ECHR, to removing anybody who arrives in this country illegally, and to capping the number of legal migrants that can come into this country. We've got a real formal plan. We've done the homework. We don't just shoot things off because they make a good tweet or get a good headline. She's doing the homework. She's coming forward with a real plan. And on day one, she will be able to deliver for this country.
It may be delivering in a coalition, of course. I know we're way ahead of ourselves here. There's not even an election being called. If there was an election tomorrow, according to the last polling, then Andy Burnham could just nick it. But once that's all settled down, the smart money at the moment, according to the polls collectively, would be that Reform would be the biggest party, but not necessarily a commanding majority, which may mean they've got to get into bed with you guys. And I think most people, if they went to the bookmakers, that would be the scenario that was laid out in front of them, a Tory Reform coalition.
Well, the thing is, we talk about the fact that Burnham's polling very well. Well, the Labour Party's polling very well. The Labour Party managed to get the biggest majority it's had in a very, very long time. The end result is exactly what we always see from the Labour Party. Hopefully people will learn the lesson. Every Labour government in history has left office with unemployment higher than when it arrived, and we're seeing that at a super fast speed under this Labour government. Nothing has changed. The same Labour MPs there who voted against the grooming gang scandal, who voted to see our veterans dragged through the courts, who voted to up that council tax despite telling us not a penny more on council tax. Those people are still running the country. It's having devastating consequences. There's a long way to go, and we're going to be holding them to account every step of the way.
Matt, thank you, as ever, for your time. Matt Vickers, MP, is the Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party. Thank you to him on that issue of small boats at 25 to 9. Let's get a voice note from Darren. Morning, Darren.
Morning, Ian. Darren from Warsaw. What these clowns and Clown-in-Chief Burnham fail to understand is when they stand there and tell us, oh, boat crossings are down 40%. Oh, boat crossings are down 50%. Well, why don't they stand in front of Rhiannon White's family and say, I feel your pain, but guess what? Boat crossings are down 40%. They just don't see it. One is too many. I can't just get my head around how they cannot see it, or perhaps they do see it and they just don't care. And the second point is, when he says safe and legal routes, he's just preaching to his backbenchers because that's what they want to hear. Great show, mate.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. 22-9. We'll talk to Ross Clark in just a second. Couple of stories that have really taken this morning. Obviously, we talk about channel migration and the latest on that, and reforms plans for naval or military assistance in that, which all sounds pretty reasonable stuff. But actually, two of the stories that have picked up a lot of momentum this morning. One is Linda LaPlante getting banned from speeding. She's the writer of Prime Suspect, got herself in the magistrate's court and a 6-month driving ban. What was she doing? Well, she wasn't speeding at all. She was just going over the 20-mile-an-hour limit, but never going over 30. In one occasion, she was caught at 24. This is the new way of nicking motorists. A lot of comment on that. I mentioned yesterday being stuck on the M20 as part of Operation Brock. I won't explain the whole thing, but it's a traffic calming measure to deal with freight going into the tunnel during the summer months and all those new checks you've got to do in freight, all of that. So it's down to 50 miles an hour average speed limit for what seems like an eternity. Andy says, I'd be glad to drive on any motorway at 50 if they kept the traffic moving. It's better than the stop-start all the time. Do you know what? I did get a bit of Stockholm syndrome about halfway through this monumental average speed limit moment. Halfway through, I thought, this is all right, actually. I've even got the cruise control on, so I'm not even, got my feet nice and clear, which is great, which was brilliant. Meant I could change my socks and everything, so that was good. So I had time in that respect. There was something about it. The other story is also this, and this is just sort of off the scale, that benefit claimants are being offered discounts on holidays and sex toys under deals involving some of Britain's biggest brands. That has naturally provoked some great texts in the well-trodden path of the double entendre. Thank you to Mark in Staffordshire, says the hole in public finances is not going to be plugged with cheap sex toys. The government needs to show some restraint, says Mark in Staffordshire. Chris says, so we're providing battery-powered friends with benefits now, it appears. Indeed. And if Ed Miliband had his way, all of those sex toys would be solar-powered, of course. So I don't know where you stick your panel. That's all I would say to that. And one from Dave in Tenbury Wells, who says, adult sex toys, yet another way to suckle at the teat of the taxpayer. It's a great point. More of that, where that came from, on the way. Let's get a word with Ross Clark, Sun columnist. Morning to you, Ross.
Good morning, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. I just wanted to pick up on your column as well. Why can't we do what the Spanish did in Kuwait and simply return migrants without considering asylum applications is the thrust of it. I mean, look, it just feeds into what we've all said. We're all banging our head against a brick wall, saying it cannot be beyond the wit of mankind or any government, blue or red, to return or stop rubber boats crossing the channel. Even the Spanish, I mean, goodness me, hardly winning awards on immigration control these days, but have managed to do something on this. We seem powerless. The Spaniards have, well, partly at least, found a method.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's extraordinary because you say that the Spanish government, Pedro Sanchez, has a remarkable sort of record for being soft on immigration. I mean, recently held an amnesty for illegal migrants, which have attracted over 1 million applicants. Yeah. And stories of people even being smuggled out of Britain on lorries, being driven down to Spain so they could, claim asylum there and take advantage of the amnesty. But even this Spanish government, incredibly soft on migration as it has been, even that has now seems to have lost patience. And 60,000 arrivals in 2 days, no, obviously not sustainable. So they just push them back across the border. And if the Spanish can return migrants to Morocco just like that without processing asylum applications, I mean, the obvious reason is why can't Britain?
Why can't Britain, indeed? And we are, we're an island, for goodness sake. I was having this conversation with an American guest recently. I mean, they've managed to do amazing things on the Mexican border, but they can't quite believe we're unable to solve it when we're an island, which you'd think would give you, in the grander scale of things, that would give you a massive advantage. You're not landlocked with anybody. That should be your greatest benefit as a country. But it seems to be our greatest weakness.
Yes, and it has to be absolutely emphasised that, migrants crossing the Channel from France to claim asylum in Britain, they are travelling from a safe country.
Yeah.
So unless they're fleeing from Emmanuel Macron's government, which I have some sympathy for, but
I'd have sympathy with that.
They have no business to claim asylum in Britain. You know, the rules state you claim asylum in the first safe country you reach. And I mean, the way this should work is that, you know, obviously southern European countries, by the state of the geography, they are going to receive more migrants. How it should work is that, you know, you have this pan-European system where, you know, you get migrants turning up, claiming asylum. Well, okay, you know, Britain and other northern European countries should chip into that. And where there are genuine refugees, we take our share of them.
Why is that? I mean, that's a bit of international law you're quoting there. Why is that just completely and spectacularly ignored?
It is weird, isn't it? Because, yeah, I mean, that's what the, you know, international agreements quite clearly state, and for very, very logical reason. You know, claim you don't shop around for your asylum. You claim it as soon as you're on safe soil. If you start shopping around, then you become an economic migrant. That's how the rules are supposed to work. And yet we seem to have this system that's sort of fed by human rights lawyers, the European Court of Human Rights and so on, which won't sort of tolerate the system working as it's actually supposed to be doing. And you know, there's absolutely nothing wrong with what the Conservatives were trying to introduce, the Rwanda scheme, where, you know, okay, you know, you claim asylum, we'll look after you, but we'll legalistic reasons, except that the European Court of Human Rights and British judges, you know, working with the European Convention on Human Rights, they, you know, took it in under their, you know, under their own powers, really, started making the law up as they're going along and starting sort of, you know, trying to make out that that was an illegal thing. No, it wasn't. It was respecting the rights of people to claim asylum where they have genuine need, but, you know, repelling others. And, you know, what we're looking at, you know, it's mass fraud. We really should be using this term. If people are coming to Britain illegally, claiming asylum when they don't have a case, they are committing fraud. And you know, the sooner we get to talking in that terms, I think that the sooner we'll actually tackle it.
Indeed. Well, let's have a listen, Ross, to the President of the United States, Donald Trump. He was asked about Andy Burnham, and he covered 2 points here, one on the issue of immigration and one another area you're very big on, and that is energy. Let's have a listen to what he said.
I think we're going to have a very good relationship. We'll see. I'm not going to tell him how to run his country, but I can tell you immigration is an incredible problem for Europe. You're allowing people in that in many cases are not going to help you. I'm going to be nice. They're not going to help you. And the people that are there, people from your country, people from other countries that have been there for a long time and did a great job, beautiful place. Look, I love it. You know, my parents both came from Europe indirectly. So a German, a Scot, and, you know, it's like one of those things. It's very sad. When I see what's happening to Europe, it's very sad to me. But they have a problem with immigration. They have a problem with energy. You have windmills all over the place. Windmills, you lose your shirt. Any country with windmills is a loser, okay?
You got to love him, Ross. Just on if you've got a windmill, you're a loser.
Well, I can't say I really love Donald Trump, but that doesn't mean he's always wrong, and he's absolutely right on some of these issues. And I wouldn't say that, you know, any country with a windmill is a loser. I mean, I think, you know, wind and solar energy have their place. They can be part of our energy mix. But the thing is, we're actually trying to rely on them for trying to rely on intermittent renewables as your main source of electricity. And that is, you know, the reality of Ed Miliband's plan to try to decarbonize the grid by 2030. You try to do that, you run up against very, very serious problems and obvious problems that, you know, what do you do when the sun's not shining, wind's not blowing, and we have no answer to that. At the moment, we're just we're forced to import power from Europe when we don't have enough renewables. When we have too many renewables, we can't even feed them into the grid. Instead, we're shoveling compensation at wind farm owners to turn their turbines off. It's completely ridiculous.
Indeed. And he did talk there about immigration as well. I mean, to him and to, as I alluded to at the beginning of our conversation, Ross, it's unfathomable that Europe would, I mean, he's talking in the wider sense, but obviously, particularly with us, a very pronounced problem with immigration. To Donald Trump and to many, it's just unbelievable that this has been allowed to happen, whether it's people flowing into Spain or Greece or Italy, these big pinch points of this story. He's incredulous that this has been allowed to happen.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, the US has had similar problems with immigration on the Mexican border, and Donald Trump in his first term sort of promised this big, beautiful wall, and it didn't really work. And but then the US had a similar sort of legalistic problems that they weren't allowed to sort of patrol return migrants from close to the border unless they were the migrants were in sort of military zones. So what Donald Trump Mark II did was to redesignate sort of areas close to the border as military zones, so then they could send the migrants back. So I mean, he was a bit sort of inventive with the law, if you like, and it's about time we started getting inventive with the law as well.
I think you're bang on. Ross, thank you as ever. Ross Clark, columnist with The Sun on a couple of issues there. Over to you, 0344 499 1000. John in Lincolnshire says, this is a great point. The problem with 20-mile-an-hour limits for older cars without digital displays is quite difficult to see the difference between 20 and 30. Yeah, one of those old needles on an old speedometer can ping all over the place the minute you tap the accelerator or remove your foot from it. It's, deeply unsatisfactory in that respect. And it is, 20 miles an hour. Man, what are they trying to do to us? Funtime Frankie says, Ian, that was the question of the year you just delivered. What is it about neurodiversity that requires a dildo? Keep up the great work, rabbiting on about the great puns. Thank you, Frankie, for that. I mean, there was only one way to talk about it, really, and that was the situation. This is the situation we are in. It is beyond extraordinary that there are if you're on benefits for neurodiverse issues, then you can claim discounts on holidays and sex toys. And these are really just companies that have thought, hang on, there's some disposable income in these areas. Let's just get with the script. They're making the most of it. Why would they not? 0344 499 1000. Just gone 10 to 9. Let's get some sports news.
90 minutes in 90 seconds. From The Sun.
And Gary Stonehouse joins us, football writer with The Sun. Morning to you, Gary.
Morning, how are you?
Good as gold. Let's start off with, footballing stories post the World Cup. Who'd have thought there'd be as many headlines coming out of the World Cup after it had finished as there were during? It's all political now, and of course, UEFA is the latest organisation to be part of that conversation. What's happening?
Right, pressure's mounting on FIFA. We heard the news last month after the World Cup how Infantino, the FIFA chief, is obviously looking for externally to flog some shares in the World Cup to external investors. That has not gone down well with the majority of the rest of world football, UEFA, Asia, CONCACAF. They're all pushing for him to resign as a pushback on this idea. UEFA already have a blueprint for a global nations league, which potentially is a tournament that could rival and be their own World Cup. A legal letter's been sent to FIFA. They want to see all the documentation for these plans. Lots of nations. I think it's only 15 that are actually still standing by Infantino. The majority, everybody else, is calling for him to resign. Huge, big change potentially coming at the top table at FIFA.
He's gone by the end of the week, isn't he, Infantino? I mean, he can't hang on now. I mean, his credibility is completely shot, if there was
you
any.
would think so, but we've seen before in the past that, they've got some neck
Certainly have.
Is the politest way to put it, and you might need a crowbar to get him out of there in the end. But yeah, I think it is looking untenable. His future, you would believe, at the moment.
Yeah, it seems extraordinary that we've arrived in this place, doesn't it? But it's where we're at, and we will watch this space. Just briefly, talk to me about Arsenal. What's going on there? What are they up to?
Yeah, the two big moves potentially for the Gunners. We know that they're keen on Vinicius Junior from Real Madrid. The Brazilian was back at Madrid yesterday, all smiles. But he's got 1 year left on his contract, 400 grand a week, big money. But we do know Arsenal are looking to try and get a deal done for him and to bring in his compatriot as well, Bruno Guimaraes, Newcastle skipper. He finally returned to Newcastle training yesterday. They're in La Manga. He finally touched down. He was initially due to join the squad on Friday. He was given extra time before linking back up with them in Spain, which led to speculation that he could potentially be undergoing a medical yesterday. That was not the case, but Arsenal did lodge a first bid yesterday with Newcastle. We do know that was rejected. It does seem as well he's reiterated, we believe, his desire to join Mikel Arteta's side. And again, it seems a matter of time if Arsenal can stump up the cash and meet Newcastle's valuation, that he will be another big name following Anthony Gordon and Sandro Tonali out the door at Newcastle this summer.
Yeah. They're going nowhere, this Arsenal outfit. That's all I'm saying on this, but I would say that as a Chelsea supporter. Football season upon us. Remember when you were a kid, Gary, and it was very simple. Dark nights, muddy pitches, chilly weather. That signified football was beginning. That's all gone out the window. We're up and running already.
That's it. It doesn't stop, does it? It doesn't stop. You've got the World Cup, and even before the World Cup was over, you had the qualifiers, qualifying round for the Champions League and Europa League going on. It just never stops. It's a constant conveyor belt of football, but it keeps us in business, so I'm not complaining.
Absolutely bang on. Gary, great to see you. Thank you very much indeed. Gary Stonehouse, football reporter over there at The Sun. Thank you to him. Let's get some comment from you. This will be Mark in Swansea on immigration. Mark, what have you got for us? Morning.
I just wondered if you'd considered what might happen in the European elections, how it's going to affect migration. So, for example, if AfD get in Germany, they're going to be, the illegals are going to bolt from Germany. Probably a load of them will end up in France. Le Pen gets France. And if we've still got a Labour government, then they're going to head across to us.
So the perfect storm to increase immigration to the UK.
Yeah, but it gets sweeter. If we get Reform or a Conservative coalition that's going to do something about it, all the illegals are going to go across to Northern Ireland and into Southern Ireland, which is Europe.
Wow. Yes.
And wouldn't that be sweet after the way they've treated us?
Well, that would be after the way Europe have dealt with this. I mean, it's absolutely extraordinary.
Well, and Ireland in particular.
Well, yeah, I mean, and Ireland have been almost the architects of their own demise on this one, because they've done naff all when it comes to immigration, and politically they're cut from that cloth. I think I'm right on this one, Mark. They're cut from that cloth where they can't bring themselves to say this is a flipping disaster and it's unacceptable, because they believe that if you're dealing with human beings, anything you say like that sounds a bit right-wing and a bit nasty, and the minute politicians start to play that, you'll never get anything done. Mark, I've got to run because of time, no other reason. Cracking points, though, about the political spectrum in Europe. Let's get the news headlines at 9 next. 0344 499 1000. It's Talk Breakfast with Ian in for Jezza, right here on Talk.
coalitions, i.e. cooperations in government, they achieve absolutely nothing. There is one party that has a real chance of winning a majority on the right in this country. We're going to fight to win. And we'd encourage everybody who shares the values that I talked about, who want mass deportations, who want a secure border, who want law and order, who want British people to come first, to get behind reform. But having said that, as Nigel said, of course we're willing to engage and talk to people from other parties, and that would include Rupert, yeah.
Secretary has brought forward a very rigorous plan in relation to this, and let's remember, of course, the numbers can fluctuate, but overall boat crossings are down quite significantly year on year, so that does suggest that the plan is working.
We've just witnessed drone footage of the French authorities handing out life jackets to illegal immigrants and then waving them goodbye as they head on their way towards the UK. So the French are actively helping and facilitating illegal immigration. In addition to that, the French forces did nothing to stop that huge migrant dinghy. In fact, the dinghy came out, then it went back to the beach to pick up even more illegal immigrants and then departed for a second time. During all of that, the French did nothing, and they even handed out life jackets and waved goodbye as these illegal immigrants head towards the UK. I think that's terrible. I mean that anyone who did cross the channel and arrive in Dover could be immediately deported within around about a week.
Wait a second, he's just dragging a line by the look of it.
Is that a warning shot towards us? I don't know.
Well, I was trying to work out.
Okay. The French officers could clearly see we were conducting an interview on the back of the fishing boat. They sailed extremely close to us and started firing gunshots, 11 live rounds. We could see the bullets hitting the water behind our boat. They weren't firing before their approach. They weren't firing afterwards. There was no notification of any kind of training exercise. So it did seem to me to be an effort to intimidate us.
The thing that I find, and I should say alarm clock Brits find so frustrating, Chris, and this is why I wanted you on this morning. Yesterday, finally, the unelected Messiah of Manchester stood up and said to consummate fury from most of us that Labour's plan to stop dinghy migrants is working. This, Chris, despite the fact that 1,000 illegal migrants have still come into this country in the last 9 days since he became Prime Minister.
Je suis un député dans le Parlement du Royaume-Uni. Why have you allowed the migrants into the water? Why haven't you stopped them?
Our order is to let them go like that.
Your order is to let them go?
We just have to say to them, don't do that, it's dangerous.
So your orders are not to intervene?
We have to protect them.
Well, there's also protecting the border.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning. Yeah, 3 minutes after 9 o'clock. Welcome to the home of Common Sense. Monday, no, it's Tuesday even, the 4th of August. We are still midsummer. The weather is stonking. It's beautiful out there. And the subjects and the news agenda and the insanity doesn't stop. There's loads of it out there. Top of the list this morning, early release, back under the spotlight, and rightly so. We hear today that the killers of PC Harper remain on the list to be released. They remain on the list to be released. Rapists, child sex offenders will not be released. Where is the line you would draw on this? I think most of us would say, well, none of the above should be released. Early release doesn't make any sense. You haven't completed what was required of you within your sentence. This is not the usual 2/3 thing. This is early on top of early. Thoughts on that as well. The Rupert Lowe right-wing PAC saga continues apace as well. Mr Lowe suggesting that Nigel Farage was meant to phone him yesterday. He didn't phone. It was his fault. He's called him a liar. What is going on here? This spat is happening in real time under the public gaze on social media. Whatever happened to booking a meeting room and having a chat? Details on that. And we've been talking about the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit because the writer Linda LaPlante, yes, her who penned Prime Suspect, has found herself as the prime suspect in the local magistrates' court after going over the 12-point limit and losing her licence for 6 months. What was her horrendous Lewis Hamilton-like offence? Doing 24 miles an hour in a 20, yeah. That's where we're at now. The 20-mile-an-hour speed limit is a menace for everyone. And she is literally the latest, the very latest, to find herself on the ban list. And we've also been talking about the extraordinary story where those on benefits for anxiety could get discounts on sex toys and holidays. What in the name of Ann Summers is that all about? Please. Gary says, I understand why you have a problem with discounted sex toys for those on benefits, provided they are British made. It helps to stimulate growth and lubricate the wheels of commerce. Quite frankly, any move to ban this would deliver British industry a huge blow. Jobs would be lost and we could end up in a very sticky situation. That is... I think I did it justice. I think I adhered to all the guidelines. Gary, well thought through. That is brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. There is the problem, you see. You've got to think of the commercial aspect of all of this. It's a fair point. Isabel Oakeshott joins us, Talks international editor, for some sobriety and some intelligence. Isabel, good morning to you.
Morning.
Well, we do live in a bit of a topsy-turvy world, don't we? It's sort of Alice in Wonderland, Hall of Mirrors. I find we're increasingly in sort of one of those sort of Charlie Brooker Black Mirror episodes on a perpetual, but everything's upside down and turned around and common sense has sort of gone out of the window. We hit cul-de-sacs where there should be none, and the general rules of convention and normality have been dismissed in favour of insanity and unfathomable. That's the sort of terrain we exist in now. What happened to the days when, as a political journalist, you thought, there's a big story, I'll write 500 words on that, I'll have it done by 6, I'll go to the pub and it'll be in the newspaper and then we can talk about it. Life's gone bonkers.
Well, you know what we always say in this household, Richard and I, when things are a bit bumpy, at least it's not boring. It's not boring, True. Is it? You know, I remember years in certain periods of the Blair administration, which were actually really boring. And equally, there were parts of the coalition years that were really boring. Politics in the UK hasn't been boring since basically the Brexit referendum. And there's just so much to be worked up about. And yeah, I mean, it doesn't do much for your blood pressure, does it? But at least there's plenty for us to debate, I guess, trying to look on the bright side.
Well, this is very true. And we made this point yesterday that normally in August, you know, there's nothing out there and it's silly season and, you know, you sort of chomp around and have a little look and maybe regurgitate a story that could develop legs potentially. But now we have a plethora and we are not short. And of course, it comes in the form of, initially we talked yesterday about Rupert Lowe and this interesting or curious sort of offer, olive branch, whatever it was. That seems to have... I thought Nigel Farage responded in a very dignified way at a press conference yesterday, a very sensible response he made, and that, you know, unfortunately caused Rupert Lowe to have I don't want to be too unkind to Mr. Lowe, but a bit of a sort of public meltdown. He's written about 700 words on Twitter. It used to be 140 characters, didn't it? You could only get on that thing. He's done an essay talking about Nigel Farage telling lies and nobody's called him. And what's going on here? What's happening?
Well, I think it's really simple, actually. It was never really a serious outreach to Nigel. If it had been, he wouldn't have done it in that manner, complete with the tinkling piano in the background. This is pure theatrics from somebody who's actually exceeded my expectations and built something that is definitely of political significance. But I don't want to overstate it more than that. He's got one MP himself. He's not going anywhere politically in terms of the infrastructure that you actually need. This is the boring bit and the really difficult bit of building a new political party is a massive mechanical operation. Yeah. Field candidates. And I think he's realised that this isn't fun and games. It's a real long, hard slog, and it's a very expensive slog. And that was just a whole look at me piece of attention seeking yesterday. I think it's very unfortunate that it's descended into this sort of silly acrimony that just looks like, male egos arguing. But I don't think it's Nigel's fault. Nigel said he'd call later. I don't know how later is defined in Rupert Lowe's dictionary, but later's pretty flexible. I mean, which one of us haven't said they'll call later and then got diverted by
right. I mean, is that really the worst thing that's happened in his day, that somebody said, I'm going to call you and didn't call at the time that you expected? I mean, God, that happens to me every single day. I did literally, during the news, I noticed somebody had emailed me 2 weeks ago that I hadn't replied to.
Exactly.
It just happens, right?
We all do it. We'll call later. I don't know what later means. It means, when it suits me, unless it's really pressing, which it clearly wasn't. So I think, as I said, don't think it's a good look for Rupert Lowe to be mudslinging and printing people's messages. Now, I know it's only a 3-word message between them, but I don't think that was ever going to engender, you've got to think, in politics, you have to think, what is the outcome that I want?
Yes.
And if the outcome you want is an agreement, then don't print somebody's private message to you.
Well, also, this is, I mean, just on that point, I mean, this sort of gets into a wider conversation about, what Twitter is good for and what it's not so good for. Mr. Lowe is a very successful businessman. He's run companies. He's made a lot of money out of doing that. He knows his way around, general accepted convention when it comes to doing business, and sticking it on a public forum. I would have thought he'd be almost the last person you would imagine would take that route, but boy, did he go
exactly there. The first person that would take that route, because it's all about him and it's all about his ego, and that is why he is no longer part of Reform. He was impossible to work with. Now, others are being much more diplomatic about this, but I'm not an MP, so I can be quite blunt about it, and I think Nigel has in the past been pretty blunt about it. Reform's MPs found Rupert Lowe impossible to work with. That's Indeed. The truth. I regret that, because I think he is talented and he's clearly got a following. And it's in all of our interests, because he's got the right ideas broadly. It's in all of our interests for those of us, and it's many of our listeners and viewers, back Rupert Lowe's agenda, even if they don't actually realise what a tricky character he is. They absolutely back a lot of what he is aiming to do. And a lot of what he's aiming to do tallies very nicely with what Reform is aiming to do. Yeah. So understandably, Reform/Restore reporters are kind of frustrated by this tussle, because we need to have as many of us on the right as possible to see off the threat from the left.
When Nigel talks about, and forgive me if I'm misquoting, but so I'll sort of paraphrase, a coalition of support. What do you think is meant by that? Does that mean Restore? Does it mean Conservatives? Does it mean just people who haven't yet voted? What do you think is the, on this particular point with Reform going forward, there is this contingent of Restore voters, and they made some inroads in Manchester, beat the Conservatives. I know my dog could have probably beaten the Conservatives, but that's another point. So there's a cohort there. Is it hoovering up that group that Nigel's referring to, or is it something else? Is he talking about getting into bed with the Tories, maybe?
Well, Reform wants to win the next election, and you've got to find a way of getting all the votes required to do that. And at some point, that may require some pragmatism. But history teaches us that the Conservatives are absolutely not to be trusted on any kind of deals. The Conservatives betrayed Reform in what was then the Brexit Party, in deals that were made behind the scenes in the run-up to Boris Johnson's election. But much more importantly, the Conservatives betrayed the whole country. 14 years of it. And look where we are now. Of course, the Labour Party's made it a lot worse. But it astonishes me that anyone who's on the right in politics can think, oh, well, we need to give the Conservatives another chance. I mean, it's that whole thing. If you always do what you always did, you'll always get what you always got. I just can't understand why people would think that that could be the answer. What remains of the Conservatives is not actually a Conservative party. It's basically the Lib Dems. It's a Lib Dem party.
Why is it they're always... I'm always curious by that, because it's often the go-to sort of, they're Lib Dem. Are they... I mean, this is a party that had a Rwanda scheme. This is a party that wants to leave the ECHR. I mean, that's not very Lib Demi.
Well, they didn't want to leave the ECHR, or they would have done it. They didn't. True. That's the whole point. They didn't want to leave.
But they're saying they will now. Yeah, you're right. They didn't campaign to leave the EU.
I don't trust them. I don't care what they say now. It's just all absolute nonsense.
But isn't that just that Suella Braverman, Robert Jenrick, they left the Conservatives because they said that they didn't believe it was very conservative, and certainly on things like immigration. In fairness to Rob Jenrick, he, of course, resigned and famously said in that letter that these are the reasons. And Suella has similarly said retrospectively that she couldn't, she had ideas to get through and was stopped getting those ideas through from the front, the top of the front bench, i.e. the Prime Minister, one would assume. Kemi Badenoch is saying, no, we've changed. I am not those people. And Chris Philp is saying, I am not those people. So if Suella and Robert Jenrick can change, why can't Kemi, Chris Philp and others?
I mean, why can't Kemi, Chris? I mean, maybe they can, but that's just 3 people. It's not the entire party. I mean,
Fair.
Maybe it's half a dozen people. Look, the bottom line is we can sit here and argue about individuals. I don't trust the Tory party. I will never forgive them for what they've done to our country. They presided over mass uncontrolled immigration, which is the #1 reason we are where we are up and down the country, with the state of our public services, the state of our city centres, the pressure on everything. It's the #1 reason. And secondly, by the way, they also presided over record taxation. That is a completely unconservative thing to do. And thirdly, they presided over the ballooning of the welfare state. So don't ask me or millions of people up and down the country just to kind of overlook that on the basis that they might have changed. Sod that. I don't think they should be given a second chance, perhaps for a generation.
On that point, just a final comment from you, Isabel, on immigration, because, of course, it is the hottest of all potatoes. And I know we chatted about this yesterday, but the sort of laughable statement that Andy Burnham gave, flanked by the White Cliffs of Dover behind him, and how dare he, in some respects, insult our intelligence by speaking for 2 minutes and saying precisely nothing. And the bits that he did say simply replicating what his predecessor had said. They have no plan, they have no idea, it's not in their DNA, it's not in their hearts, they're never going to solve this problem, they don't really want to. Nigel Farage then talked about, well, what about getting a military assistance on this, the Royal Navy and the like? It's been met with some resistance from the French. Now, we don't lose any sleep over this kind of stuff. They said it's a threat to their sovereignty. Who cares? And they said it's also against maritime law of some sort. I think they probably made that second bit up.
God, it annoyed me. Yeah, this whole thing of Andy Burnham going to Dover and standing over an empty boat. Are you kidding me?
He touched the boat as well. Look, there's images now on the screen. He touched the boat. He was given a tour around a rubber dinghy.
Oh, my God. I mean, seriously, this guy. I like Andy Burnham, but how is that the PR stunt that you'd come up with if you want to show that you're going to stop this happening? Here's the thing, Ian. And I'm going to bring forward some interesting evidence on this whenever we're ready to do it. I think what's happening here, you know how they're going on about the numbers have come down,
yes.
The number of crossings has come down. Well, first of all, I can be very, very clear about one thing. The demand for crossings has not gone down at all. There is still a huge queue and a tidal wave of people heading to northern France to get to Britain. But here's what I think is happening. While the UK government has been not focused enough, but at least politically preoccupied by the small boats, there's been, I suspect, a very significant uptick in the number of people coming in the back of lorries. Now, when you deal with the people smugglers, and I've got some experience of this, coming over in the back of a vehicle is actually more expensive. They charge more for that service. Why? Because it's actually far more reliable than going in a boat. It's much more easy to plan. And I think there's an awful lot of this happening. I think it's happening in different ways, not just, for example, through the tunnel, but also on passenger ferry services. And I'll have more to say on that in coming days.
Looking forward to that. Very finally, Andy Burnham's on holiday. Look, he did his thing at Dover and then apparently legged it to Butlins for a week. I don't know what's going on there. Look, we're all entitled to a holiday. When you've been in the job for 2 weeks, it does seem a little bit urgent to nip off for your annual vacation.
OK, I think we should ask our listeners this. If you had just become Prime Minister, would you, A, carry on with the family holiday that you planned, even though you'd only just got into number 10? Or would you, B, tell the family, listen, guys, I'm really sorry, but there's been a teensy little change in our life circumstances at the moment. I tell you what, kids, I'm going to take you on a bumper holiday in October. Which would you do?
Yeah.
It's not going to be A, is it? Just carry on regardless.
No.
Who does that?
Who does that? Absolutely right. Isabel, thank you. Always great to speak. Isabel Oakeshott, Talks International editor, with us on the programme. Lots of comment coming through on you on a whole range of things. Ed in Hampshire referenced prison sentences, says prisoners should serve their entire sentence. Good behaviour is expected as it is in normal society. Prison sentences should always be increased for bad behaviour. Why we've not come at it from that way, I have no idea. And on 20-mile-an-hour speed limits, this comes from Robbie, who says the 20-mile-an-hour limit is a real problem for anyone who lives on the Welsh-English border. I spent equal time driving in both, consistently switching from 30 to 20. I automatically slowed down to 20 when driving past speed in England. I'm regularly getting nice hand gestures as well. It is interesting because Wales did the whole kind of universal thing. And then they rode back a bit on that, didn't they? And said, oh, it's not going to be universal. And the idea that they did it in the first place, was never really about... They hadn't road tested, no pun, every road and gone, this road is quite clearly needs to be 20. But they'd just gone, let's make it 20, because if you're on the left, this was Labour-run administration, of course, it sounds like the kindest thing to do. Let's go 20. And then people go, yeah, you're really preening your environmental whiskers on this, Welsh Labour. That's what that was about. Why on earth would you opt to do that? It's a flipping road. It's not someone's living room that you're legislating for. Or what speed should we drive through Bob's dining room? No, it's a road, for God's sake. 20 miles an hour is ridiculous unless there are circumstances, schools, hospitals, etc., that dictate otherwise. We all know this. It's common sense. It's staring at. Nobody asked for it, by the way. Nobody was crying out for it other than other similar interested parties. Let's get a voice note on Andy Burnham going on holiday, because we're talking about that one as well. This comes from Craig. Morning, Craig.
Hi, Ian. Craig from Cornwall. So Mr. Burnham gets the most important job in this country and decides to take a holiday. OK, well, we're all entitled to a holiday. No problem with that. But really, the timing, this country is in such a mess. He's had a couple of weeks in the job, and has he had enough? Perhaps it's got to him already. All right, Ian, cheers, bye.
Leadership of Reform is in trouble with all these scandals, apparent scandals over donations. Reform, nevertheless, is well known across the country. Reform as a vehicle is capable, if it has the right leadership, of actually forming a government. And that with the weakened leadership of Reform, there's a risk that Reform itself will be lost. And he doesn't want to lose the potential of a vehicle that could provide the kind of government that he and I and others wish this country to have.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Yeah, good morning. Welcome back. 9:25. It's Ian in for Jezza on Talk Breakfast for the next couple of weeks. Just a couple of points on the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit here. Adrian in Wales says, I live in Wales, and believe me, I'm no fan of the 20-mile-an-hour limits. However, you don't lose your licence for doing 24 and a 20-mile-an-hour limit. You lose it because you already had 9 points on your licence, so you're a repeat offender. Yes, and I never said otherwise. That's exactly what happened with Linda LaPlante. She did it 4 times, I think. But the point is, they were all in the 24, 25 department. So the idea that this was speeding is laughable. And the idea that you are... I mean, I'm not suggesting... It's a bit like parking tickets, OK? If you did away with parking tickets, people would park... So you've got to have some kind of penalty to deter people from being idiots. But the 30-mile-an-hour limit was just fine, all right? All the road safety campaign videos told us it was just fine. And then we went evangelical. And this is about politics, I sense, more than it is about road safety. But I understand Kevin's first point there, that most people are not a fan of it. But here's a really good point as well from Patrick, who says, we've had the 20-mile-an-hour limit thrust upon us in Wales for nearly the last 3 years, and it's a nightmare. Some people doing 15 miles an hour with a queue of vehicles behind them. It's so frustrating. You drift off not watching the road or scream at the top of your lungs for the swines to get out the way. It's a really good point. If you're ever driving behind the elderly person in small car club, and we've all done that, then you'll notice what many of them do, and I sort of half get it, because they're a little more nervous and feel a bit more vulnerable about driving and therefore trying to be more vigilant, they will always drive under the speed limit. So if it's a 30, they'll do 25, sometimes 20. But if it's a 20, they'll do 15, and on odd occasions, sometimes 10. A car doing 10 miles an hour is essentially a stationary car. I mean, it's doing nothing, right? It is horrific to drive behind a car doing that. I had that quite recently, the person doing about 15 miles an hour. And I thought, what is the point of this? This is utterly ridiculous. It's an open road. There's nothing on the road. It's notionally, it's a 20-mile-an-hour limit because someone decided to change it at that. Nobody requested it. It's not like there was a load of accidents and they said, you've got to do something about this. There were no accidents on this road whatsoever. No track record of accidents. There was nothing dangerous about it. It was a straight flipping road, for God's sake. And they changed it to a 20. Because it makes us look good, doesn't it? It's environmentally friendly, it's caring, it's all of that old guff. It's none of those things in reality. There were no accidents on that road. And, of course, Mrs McDougall in front of me decides that 20 means 15. So she's pootling along, and I'm thinking, I don't want to overtake her. That looks a bit rude. I don't want to scare her. I don't also want to do 50. I just want to do the limit. Maybe a touch more when it's empty. You take the point. 0344 499 1000. Back to more of your comments and voice notes in just a second. Let's speak with Ryan Saby, Deputy Political Editor over there at The Sun. Morning to you, Ryan.
Good morning, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. There's a lot on the agenda, particularly this story we've been running with throughout the course of this morning about the early release programme. We understand today that early release, the killers of PC Harper, which became a very high-profile, almost totemic example of why early release is not appropriate. And this was really the story that prompted Andy Burnham to put a pause on it and say, let's rethink this. We learned today, Ryan, that those killers are still on the list at the moment to qualify for early release. So in that respect, nothing has changed.
Yeah, no, interesting overnight. I mean, we took a view on this story and gave it, big prominence. It's our front page story today. And I think one thing that could be looked at is whether Andy Burnham, in a way, when he spoke about this case just 10 days or so ago, did he give the family almost a sense of false hope? You know, he didn't make any promises, but he definitely mentioned it and said it would be under review. And I just wonder whether the family thought that in the circumstances that these two men who were convicted may actually stay behind bars. But it seems that they've had this review and the prison capacity and overcrowding is at such a level that there was no other option. But if you're so, you know, the Prime Minister speaks about his frustration at this, but if you're the Prime Minister and frustrated about it, you know, is there something you can do? It feels like he is in charge. And this is one of the, you know, he's had a few tests so far, but it feels like this is the first big one that he's had. And there is a lot of anger about the decision.
Yeah, understandably so. Rapists and people charged with serious child sexual offences will be excluded from the list. Many of our listeners have taken umbrage at this word serious that appears on their list. Any child sex offence is surely serious.
Yeah, totally. And you know, they have made these exemptions on the Sentencing Act, the law that brings this about. But I think people would take umbrage at that, and you know, there is going to be a lot of frustration, whether it's across the political divide amongst the public. And I think it's also the fact that when sentences are handed down, the victims, the families affected, you know, think that people should serve their full sentence. Sure. And if there is an early release scheme, you know, it's very, very difficult to comprehend why that, you know, their release date should then be reduced again. It's, you know, you've been caught up in this. You are a victim or a survivor or a family member who's been affected. It's tough to take.
It really is tough to take, and we'd have loved to have got a word from the Prime Minister on this, but unfortunately he's on a Beano to Benidorm at the moment, Ryan, so we've got no chance of that. Decided it's taken that much of a toll on him that he needs a break. He's only been there a fortnight. What's going on?
Well, I was surprised at this. I thought at some point he was always going to take a break over the summer, but you know, you were talking to Isabel Oakeshott just a few moments ago, and I think listen to what she says with the possibility of him going away later in the year. I'm not sure what the optics look like on this. Just 2 weeks after getting elected, he feels that he needs to take a break. Now, this may be pre-planned. It may be with his family. Now, we don't begrudge anyone taking a break. We think it's healthy for all politicians. But I just wonder what signal it sends out just so soon. There's been a raft of announcements. He's spent some money. He's tried to get on the right side of the public. But you just wonder, making a decision such as he has done with the early release scheme and then disappears on holiday again.
It's not like he fought a general election, is it? And he did weeks of campaigning, and one day he was in Edinburgh, the next day he was in Penzance, and then he was off to Bristol, throw in a little bit of Skegness, and then over to Nottingham, into Blackpool. I mean, it's that kind of, when you're on the hustings and you're doing that kind of relentless travel, non-stop, 24/7, you're never... Then you're doing He didn't do any of that. He just got given a job.
Yeah, no, there was, on one side, people will argue, oh, he was great in Manchester Mayor, he fought the by-election, oh, he's really tired. However, look, you know what you get into when you take on the job as Prime Minister. They always talk about the first 100 days being very, very important for a new administration. But it seems after 14 days, he's decided to take a break. So, again, that will not look good. And it's one thing that you don't want to give your enemies, your opposition, too much fire to throw back at you. And this is just one of those things that they'll be able to point to. As I say, we don't. It's fine for people to have holidays, but is it the right timing?
Indeed. Do we have any... I mean, we've been joking apart here this morning. I just mentioned he's gone to Benidorm earlier. I said he went to Pontins. I think I also suggested Butlins as well. I don't know actually where he's gone. Any intel on where he's spending his week off?
Well, I think, and I understand, and I've not had this confirmed by people close to Andy Burnham, but I do understand that he's gone abroad. He possibly in Europe. Beyond that, I wouldn't want to say because I just don't know. But I do.
Yeah, I mean, we would never identify, you know, what hotel room he was in, number 67 at the Benidorm Heights Hotel. That would be tough. But I would imagine he's gone for some sunshine, although there's plenty of it over here as well at the moment. Just a final point, Ryan. This sort of battle between, well, I was about to say a battle between Restore and Reform. It seems that Rupert Lowe's sort of having an argument in his own sitting room at the moment.
Yeah, this is an ongoing saga that keeps giving. And, you know, is Nigel Farage going to talk to Rupert Lowe? Are they going to get, you know, back in a room together to talk and thrash some kind of deal out? But I think one thing that the serious point is the Greater Manchester Mayor race. Reform 21%, I think Restore 9%. It just shows that support on the right needs to sort of come together, actually. Otherwise, you know, the people on the right will fear that they will be letting in a progressive left at the next election. So at some point they're going to have to sit down and talk it through. And whether, you know, there's been a lot of falling out between Rupert Lowe and Nigel Farage in the past, is there going to be enough glue to make it all stick together?
Indeed. Well, we'll watch with interest. Not going to be dull. We know that much. Ryan, thank you as ever. Ryan Sabey is Deputy Political Editor at The Sun. Thank you to him. More comment coming in from you. This one from June. We've just had a text from the National Grid to say due to hot weather, we may have power cuts. Obviously, solar panels are not the answer. Yeah, I was out at, well, I mentioned yesterday, I went to the Isle of Sheppey on Sunday. It's not a journey you make that often. Certainly, I've been a load of times for different reasons, but this was the first in a long time. And, of course, from the coast there, you can see... My little boy said to me, what's that in the sea? And he was talking about the windmill thing, because there's a whole farm out there. And I said, it's a wind farm. So what do you mean it's a farm? Didn't understand the way. He's 7, 8 now. But there's a lot of that going on. And I don't know what specifically. If somebody said, oh, see those windmills over there? They are powering all these houses over here. See those solar panels up there? They're powering all of the... we're not in that place. Nobody... It's a complete jungle of confusion. And as Ross Clark said, Ross writes a lot very sceptically about Ed Miliband and some of the evangelical measures we've had in this field of late, but acknowledges, you know, there is a place for this stuff, but it's not the answer to everything. And clearly, as June says there, certainly not the answer when you're getting a power cut. Let's get a voice note on the Navy in the Channel. Nigel Farage's suggestion for solving the crisis. This comes from Sean. Morning, Sean.
Morning, Ian. Sean from Grimsby. Seen a lot of outrage by lefties last night about Nigel Farage's plan to put the Navy in the Channel. If we had the ships, I think it's a great idea. And it's the usual excuses from the left. It's against the law. We can't do it. It's impossible. We need permission from the French. Some people have even said, oh, we're going to go to war with France. No, we can do it. We really, really can do this if we really, really wanted to. This is all about will and the will to get it done. And we need a politician who has got the will, who's not scared to upset the French. I mean, what are the French going to do anyway? Great show, mate.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
It is Talk. Welcome back. 0344 499 1000. Julia Hartley-Brewer's here at 10 this morning. She will, of course, nip in before then to tell us a little bit more about what is going on. This one in from Cliff. This one in from Rich, who says, I graph my backside off and can just about afford... Let me just give some context. If you're just tuning in, you'll think, why is he mentioning the word dildo? I mention this in journalistic context because, of course, the story is that if you've got some kind of anxiety issue and you're on benefits, you can get cut-price holidays and cut-price sex toys. Rich says, I graph my backside off and can just about afford a dildo. I can't afford a holiday, though. More Fernanza for the lazy and the feckless. Thank you for nothing, says Rich in Leeds. Cliff says, is a dildo really a hidden benefit? Straight up, yes, seriously, apparently. Thank you, Cliff. Lines are open 20 to 10. It's worth absolutely having a moment to mark a very sad day here. And that is, of course, we heard yesterday of the death of the columnist, the Sun columnist, Rod Liddle. Rod was a prolific columnist, journalist, just a great storyteller, a man who could hit the pulse and the bullseye every single time. He had a way, he had a language, he had a style. We used to have him on regularly here on Talk. He was just a great guy to speak with, always on the money, and even if you disagree with him, hugely entertaining. Let's speak with Kevin O'Sullivan, our own presenter here at Talk that worked alongside Rod and has known Rod also for years as well. A very sad day, and even a bit of a shock to us, even those who knew him as well.
Well, yeah, it came out of the blue after a short illness, as they say. We'd missed his columns in the Sunday Times, the Spectator, the Sun, and we were sure he'd be back. But, of course, it wasn't to be. A real tragedy. I said this several times yesterday, and I'm going to double down on it. I think we have lost the greatest journalist of his generation, an extraordinary writer. If he had an opinion, he would go out of his way to have the opposite opinion, but not just for the sake of it. He wasn't just a knee-jerk contrarian, but he had unusual views, and at first you would wildly disagree with him, and within about 20 minutes, you would utterly agree with him. He was a brilliant arguer, a phenomenal writer, hilarious in person, and a hilarious writer as well. As I say, we've lost a colossus of journalism.
Indeed. And he's that really interesting career. I still have to pinch myself and remind myself that he, in the midst of all, this great polemicist and opinionist and tell it like it is, didn't really care what anybody thought and wrote brilliantly. He was the master of the metaphor and all of that. He could be humorous but serious and all of that stuff, really hitting the pulse of the nation. In the midst of all of it, he was also the editor of the Today programme on Radio 4, which, that would have been the most lively radio newsroom. We work in a fairly lively place. God knows what it was like when Rod was running that over there at the BBC.
Well, he shook the place up.
Yeah.
He dragged it, kicking and screaming, into the 20th century. He was a controversial appointment. And he said that his mission statement as editor of the BBC's flagship Today programme, its flagship news show on Radio 4, he said his mission was to get into as much trouble with his bosses as he possibly could, and he certainly did. He tried to get rid of Thought for the Day, where they bring wheel out some religious bore to give you some scriptures or something. He tried to get rid of that, but that didn't happen. And in the end, he got the sack because he was given a column in The Guardian. And he wrote about the Countryside Alliance and said, if anybody can't quite remember why they vote Labour, I recommend you take a look at the Countryside Alliance. And with that, he was sacked from the BBC and was immediately in massive demand. By the way, when he got his very first job in journalism, he had a sort of interesting career beforehand. He became a sort of mature student at the LSE, London School of Economics, and funded himself by writing speeches for the Labour Party. He said during the Labour Party's most unsuccessful period ever. But anyway, he decided that he wanted to be a punk musician. That didn't work out. So he decided he'd be a journalist. So he wrote to the South Wales Echo, wrote to the editor, informing him that his paper was a bit crap. And if he gave him a job, that it might improve. So full marks to the editor of the South Wales Echo. He gave him a job. And the rest is history. I mean, he began his career as a serious iconoclast and went on to build on that amazingly. I've been rereading some of his columns last night. I mean, that guy got away with stuff that the rest of us...
it is unbelievable. The other thing he would get away with as well, and we're going to play a clip of you and Rod having a bit of a giggle over Keir Starmer in just a second, but you know, when you look back at old, I don't know, Michael Parkinson interviews, and he's interviewing John Wayne or somebody like that, they're all smoking a cigarette, and you look at that and you think, yeah, that doesn't happen these days. Yeah, it did when Rod was on with you, and I can remember interviewing Rod about, I don't know, about a year ago now, and he had this is only like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he had a glass of wine and a cigarette on the go.
Must have been more than a year ago, Ian. He gave up 2 years ago.
I must have, well, maybe it was that.
When he gave up smoking, you know, because I gave up smoking about 30 years ago, you know, I told him he was going to find it very, very difficult. I think it was the achievement of his life that he managed it. But as you say, you know, I used to have him on every Tuesday night. Samara Gill was my producer, and we would approach that weekly event with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Because we knew we were going to get 25 minutes of pure gold.
100%.
He would almost certainly be dreadfully framed. You know, he'd be sort of like this. You know, the camera would be sideways, the lighting would be dreadful, and as you say, then you'd see this huge glass of wine, and in the old days, cigarette smoke.
I know, that was the thing. I thought, you just don't see that these days. I mean, and there he was, you know. And if you had him on long enough, he'd light up another one as well, which was just incredible. Let's have a little listen then. This is you and Rod having a bit of a chinwag, really at the expense of our former Prime Minister.
A warm welcome to a prolific columnist, Rod Liddle.
Sausages.
Yeah, that's what I was... Hang on a second.
Sausages.
We've got it all lined up.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
He's got to get this sort of thing right. Not only did he get the word wrong, he got it hysterically wrong. Hostages,
it's still
sausages.
Funny.
It is funny. I'm not saying it's not. But, I mean, what's wrong with him? Why can't he get anything right?
Because there's no depth there, I think. I don't think he believes in anything. And I think they're just words. And any word, as Jacques Derrida once famously commented, that there is no one-to-one relationship between a word and its meaning. So for Sir Keir, hostages could easily double as sausages when the need comes. There's no depth to it. It's just the recitation of platitudes.
I love it. When the need comes. Just beautiful with words, Kev.
As I say, those 20-25 minutes every Tuesday were both brilliant and journalistically always incredibly dangerous. So we were on edge with old Rod because you never quite knew what he was going to say. Sometimes he would say something really close to the edge or possibly cross the line, and Samara would say in my ear, "Shall we dump that? You know, should we get rid of that?"
Yeah.
And I invariably go, "No, it's okay, it's Rod," because people expected him to say
correct
things that were, to say the least, controversial, and he could reduce, you know, the great of men and women of state to the level of complete morons. I mean, he would just say that. Yeah. He would just say the Secretary of State for Health is a cretin, or the Prime Minister is a total idiot. You would realise he was right. And you saw that little clip there. He wore his intellect very, very lightly. But boy, oh boy, he's arguably the cleverest man I ever knew.
Yeah.
And I used to read his columns all the time. You know, when I pick up the Spectator, Sunday Times, The Sun, the first thing I would turn to if Rod had a column, and it was
Rod's column.
And you know, I don't consider myself to be an uneducated man, you know, but invariably, not necessarily in The Sun, but in the Sunday Times or the Spectator, there would always be a word in it I didn't even know what the hell it meant.
Yes, he was the master at like throwing in. Sometimes I wondered whether he just made them up. I mean, they were just beautiful and always fit and always sounded rhythmically and journalistically correct, whatever they meant.
Fantastic writer, and you know, I think you can sum up Rod. You know, he spent. I think he was born in Sidcup, southeast London, sort of thing, and moved to Middlesbrough or something. So he had this kind of twin affinity with the kind of southeast London and Middlesbrough, the northeast. Hated London, absolutely hated London. Moved back up to the north. But I think you can sum up Rod with the fact that he absolutely loved being a genuine Millwall fan, and that maxim about Millwall you could sum up with Rod when Millwall fans always sang, "No one likes us, we don't care." Well, I think a lot of people didn't only like Rod, they loved Rod. But if you didn't like him, he just didn't care.
He didn't care at all. Just finally, we should give a mention as well to James Well. It's the anniversary of James's death. Now, we can say this because we knew him and he was our friend, but we talked about Rod sadly dying after a short illness. James died after the longest illness anyone could ever possibly have because he stayed and survived and functioned with terminal cancer for what seemed like forever. I remember you once saying to him in the office, "James, you're the most well-looking terminal cancer patient we've ever seen." And he really was. I mean, most of the time he looked great. Sometimes the drugs kind of played a little bit of havoc with him, but generally speaking, from the moment he was told, "Sorry, mate, we can't cure this," he went on for about 5 years and looked perfectly healthy for most of it.
Yeah, he was phenomenal. I remember towards the very end, he used to come into the office in his mobility scooter.
He did,
walk, and yet, you know, on air, he came alive. You know what I'm like. I said to him once, "You've completely, you're lying, aren't you? You've completely made this cancer up in order to gain attention." And of course, he laughed. But yeah, I mean, what a guy, what a broadcaster. You know, I used to have lots of rows with him and stuff, but I came to have a lot of affection for James. I think he didn't reluctantly. I think he came to quite like me as well.
I spoke to him about 3 days.
God knows how he managed that. But,
I know, it was amazing. I spoke to him about 3 days before he died, Kev. He was in a hospice. He could hardly speak at this point. And he said to me through this sort of gravelly, slightly gasping voice, he said, "I don't think I'm ready to go." And it was it was the funniest... It was the funniest thing. And only he could come up with that. I think it's worth just finishing then, Kev, on a little tribute to some of his best bits, because this is a really worthy moment. Thank you to Kev. Kevin O'Sullivan, of course, he's back on Talk when's Kev back on? 4 o'clock. I've lost my complete time zone, Kev, sorry. Back at 4 o'clock. I'm thinking it's 1 o'clock now. What am I doing? Back at 4 on Drive. Kevin O'Sullivan, thank you. Let's have a listen on this first anniversary of the death of our good friend, colleague, national institution and legend, James Well. Here's some of James's best bits.
How are you doing?
Good. Now, what do you want?
I don't want anything.
Thank you very much indeed.
Every night from 10 till 2, Whaley's on the line for you. Give me a ring. I'll be there, the Mega Mouth of Radio Air.
£300.
Let me just stop you for one moment. This was a section that was called Call Biggins. Did you want to ask a question to Christopher Biggins?
No.
Right.
Where's your buzzer?
No, I've got the frigging buzzer in here.
Everybody's good at cooking something, and I'm good at cooking crumble. Would you like some? Well, would you then?
Yes. How do you get such attractive women around you, Stanley? How does this work? I mean, what is there? What is there?
I feel very, very privileged.
And don't it feel good? Yeah!
I don't give a stuff whether she likes the show or not.
Most people who watch this show don't like it. That's a fact.
That's what happens.
That's what you get when you commentate it. You show your small nipples.
As far as I know, that kind of animal doesn't have any testicles.
He has.
No.
They're just under the desk.
There they are. I choose not to show them.
Do you remember, Sweet, when we went out to that nightclub in London called Stringfellows? Yeah, I thought you would.
I get a sense with him that he is he's a sensitive guy as well.
I remember listening to you, the midnight show. You were fantastic then.
Yeah, but if you heard it now, you'd probably think it was rubbish.
You should get rid of him now.
When you hear shows that you hear in the past, you go, why didn't I think that was good?
Go on, take him up, get him up out the seat, move him out of the door. Lizzie Cundy has now kicked out Vladimir Putin. Call us 0344 499 1000. Did you come here legally?
We actually managed to sneak in. Yeah.
Call the police.
I don't think you realise what you're saying. You're being insulting and rude.
That's the whole point of the restaurant.
Yeah, but it's not very pleasant.
No, well, you don't go there. It's like watching this. Don't go breaking my heart.
I couldn't live if I tried.
Oh, honey, I can't hear
Wait for the beat, man.
You rang up for the text number.
To go live on air just to ask us for the...
Why the hell would you ring up for the text number?
Why didn't you just...
.9,000 people are leaving Morocco because apparently it's war-torn. But Jet2 this morning are offering 20% off a trip to Morocco for a week. Which country in Europe wipes everybody else's backside but its own people? Here.
This is a huge football story, folks. UEFA has now said no European nation will participate in any FIFA competition so long as proposals to create a
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back. Yes, the home of common sense. Coming up to 10 o'clock, which means Julia Hartley-Brewer is here. Sorry about that. But it's going to be... You come in looking very summery and the studio's freezing.
I'm so excited about the aircon, I can't tell you, mate.
Do you know what? We haven't had aircon. We're like kids. We haven't had aircon for about 6 weeks, have we? And even then it was only for one day.
It was a great day.
It was a great day. I'm expecting this to also
How moany do we sound? There are people who are like, doing proper physical labour and actually have got, frankly, a proper job. Rather more, I'm sure Al Murray always calls essential personnel. Don't sit there whinging about sitting in aircon.
Air conditioning. But it's been murder in here. But it might be one day only again.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, we could just go off on holiday again. You know me, I'm no one who doesn't like a holiday. But
that's true enough.
Andy, but would I, 2 weeks into the most important job in the country, go,
no.
Yep. Yeah, I think I'm just going to... I'm all for... I've got no issue with politicians taking holidays, but 2 weeks into the job that you've apparently been desperate to do...
Yes.
You've got all these plans...
Yeah.
And you're 2 weeks in, you're going to go and take a holiday with a wife and kids. Sorry, mate.
Of all the things that they were supposed to be on top of, which was like changing the image